Introducing Yang Soo-hook, the sole individual proficient in dismantling a dynasty single-handedly. Furthermore, he brought together the landmass of Huan, employing combat techniques so formidable that individuals believed he was a deity. He possessed riches, fame, whole legions bowing in reverence before him. Yet, he found it all tiresome. Thus, he resolved to abandon the royal seat and return to Earth, the origin he hails from, prior to descending into this realm. However, to accomplish that, he required the assistance of this glossy-scalped sinister mage to invoke the dimensional journey incantation. The elderly gentleman inquired the reason. He yearned to return to the state of being an ordinary human. Hook maintained a straightforward approach. He longed for his family. The elderly man initiated the sphere and performed his task. The host had been anticipating this occasion for an extended period, and he is ultimately returning to Earth. The illumination extinguished. The initial noise Soo-hook perceived was that of a device. He unveiled his gaze, identified the Korean characters on the planner, and felt pleased that the incantation had succeeded. As he attempted to rise, his physique felt as though it had been struck via a lorry. Gazing into the reflection, he discovers that the Black Sage failed to fulfill his part of the agreement and failed to deliver the body promptly. Therefore, he employed his clandestine method to harness energy and repair the disordered physique he found himself trapped within. Following a brief interval, he had already experienced significant improvement, and his countenance appeared significantly more presentable as well. He initiates the system and receives a jolt, since he is now classified as rank A, whereas he previously held rank SS. He becomes angry because he was returned at an inappropriate moment. A moment later, caregivers arrive at the entrance. Our lad summons those individuals, and the medical staff panic, as if they were gazing at an undead creature. The physician arrived soon thereafter, conducted the examination, and verified to ensure that all was well. That was worrisome, because he had remained unresponsive for 5 years. Hook was unable to comprehend that the hairless elderly gentleman dispatched him 5 years later than he ought to have. The man simply became immobilized, remaining silent. The physician departed, and he remained there, immobilized. However, at that moment, an individual unlatched the door. It was his younger sibling, Sutada, weeping and gazing at him, incapable of accepting that he had ultimately roused. Hook assures her that all is well. She subsequently begins elucidating on an influence portal that occurred 5 years prior. It created a chasm in the center of the metropolis, obliterating all that surrounded it. Amidst the turmoil, she gazed upward and observed numerous gateways in the atmosphere. Fighters surged in to battle the creatures. Now, 5 years later, the globe has transformed significantly due to that occurrence. Hook understands he has a considerable amount to make up for. As a result, here on the planet, there are indeed individuals marketing bottled flatulence online. Shifting the topic, he inquires about the educational institution. Sukiya states she did not attend university and has been striving to generate income instead. The main character realizes she is being dishonest, yet release it. Following extended discussions, he begins to experience recollections during his most recent encounter with his father, who was perpetually laboring while all he desired was to engage in play. Yet his father never had the opportunity for that. He was an unsuccessful author who never achieved. He devoted his entire existence yearning to become a poet, but never succeeded in accomplishing it. As Hook matured, he began expressing his thoughts, to the extent that he ceased to feel pride, to refer to him as his father. One afternoon, he was strolling along the avenue when the initial gateway emerged directly behind him and drew him closer. His father arrived in an attempt to rescue him, but it was already beyond redemption. That was the final occasion he ever beheld the individual. At this moment, his father enters the chamber, lets the sack fall onto the ground, and, with a trembling voice, expressed remorse due to insufficient funds to provide his son with superior care. Soo-hook wept like a small child and informed him that it was not his responsibility. The pair embraced. 3 days afterward, Soo-hook was released from the medical facility. The family had relocated to a considerably more modest location than he recalled. 5 years of medical expenses had depleted the household's monetary resources. Thus, he reached a conclusion. He required funds as swiftly as feasible in this novel realm teeming with gateways and subterranean chambers. Individuals with extraordinary talents had transformed into the new aristocracy. Thus, the quickest method to earn substantial income was to become a hunter. The issue was that his physique experienced 90% bodily contamination due to the extended state of unconsciousness. However, that did not deter him. He devoted days ascending and descending those staircases. Nevertheless, the advancement was gradual. Subsequently, he reflected on his relatives, who was laboring solely to settle the medical expenses. That is when he directed his focus, reinforced his determination, and began sprinting once more without pausing. Regardless of the discomfort, he's not surrendering. The sun was beginning to descend, and he continued to ascend and descend those steps. Individuals began to converse. Following days of racing, he ultimately acquires an additional point in power and endurance. Additionally, his rank increased to 2, and as a result, his body completely rejuvenated. At this moment, he has the opportunity to transform into a hunter. The following day, within the Hunter Association edifice, he proceeds directly to the enrollment area. Before long, his efforts are disrupted. Suhuk enters the chamber, discussing the examination. Absent. With great fervor, the individual elucidates that he must place his hand on the sphere, and if it illuminates, he will be roused. The former sovereign is convinced that many individuals arrive there under the impression that they are exceptional, yet they are not at that stage. Due to the portal, he is aware that he is indeed one of them. And, as anticipated, the sphere radiates brilliance at his contact. The gentleman commends him and states that he will enroll him immediately, initially presenting him with a document to endorse. Suhuk believes the procedure is more straightforward than anticipated, as he merely needed to verify the existence of mana. Before long, he completes the paperwork, and once finished, he submits it. However, there appears to be something amiss. The individual claims he remains at level 1, yet he has 32 abilities recorded, prompting the former emperor to inquire if that poses an issue. He responds with a negation, simply indicating that it lacks logic, and in frustration advises him not to interfere with him. Suhuk considered the figure somewhat elevated, yet he didn't find it particularly strange, and it's disheartening that they lack faith in his account. He inquires whether he may switch the window to public mode to demonstrate it. The individual expresses that it is feasible, yet he seeks to comprehend the intentions behind his strategy. In reply, Suhuk promptly reveals his window, astonishing him. There are so many that it leaves the individual truly astonished, coming to the realization that there are indeed more than 10 abilities, and even more remarkably, that they all hold a rank of A or above. Suhuk inquires whether he trusts him at this moment, to which the man consents, stating that he will complete the registration as swiftly as he can, and he even expresses remorse for failing to identify him sooner. As pledged, it has been completed and forwarded to another individual, to Ocean Wu of the Hunters Association. The man inquires whether this is genuinely what he is witnessing, and the other affirms he witnessed it firsthand, asserting that it is entirely factual. He gazes at the document once more, focusing on the individual's name. The auburn-haired individual believes it has been quite a while since a captivating newcomer appeared. In the interim, Suhuk is outdoors, sprinting through the urban landscape to return. Completing that jog from the organization to my residence make him sense as if his heart is about to burst. At the very least, his endurance increased by 1. The system incentives are favorable, and he even believes that at this pace, he may ultimately develop diabetes. The former emperor also believed he could commence hunting right after registering, but that was not true, as one must first finish a fundamental training program. This is a nationwide initiative aimed at safeguarding individuals from being overwhelmed when they venture into dungeons unprepared and uninformed. It commences at the conclusion of each month. Currently, it is still October 26th, with merely 5 days remaining. Suhuk is aware that this training is unnecessary for him, yet it is a process that cannot be evaded. Therefore, in the meantime, he intends to engage in extensive training and enhance his physique even further. The former sovereign must undertake this for his kin, as well as for his own benefit. And just as swiftly, the 5 days elapsed in the blink of an eye. Gaze. There are greater numbers of individuals at the location than he anticipated. Following. He listened to some individuals steer clear of it due to its significant hazards. However, that poses no issue for him. Abruptly, something seizes his focus. He ponders what that entity was that glided past him like a form of energy. All are astonished by a voice announcing that there are a complete of 48 attendees present. A fair-haired woman observes them, with a formidable posture. She requests that everyone directs their gaze ahead. The attendees are astonished by the sprite. At least one young woman is enchanted, believing her to be extraordinarily lovely. By the time Suhook sensed her presence, she had already reached that location. He couldn't even monitor her actions. The former emperor is convinced that there is more to it than mere swiftness, and perhaps it was an extraordinary elven talent. With a grin, the young man discovers that intriguing. Something piques the elf's interest. She observes the youthful Suhook amidst the crowd. The organization's directive insists that all members monitor him, and she is aware that despite being at level 1, he momentarily sensed her presence. Even among hopeful elves, she has never encountered a situation this captivating. In the meantime, the others are filled with wonder as they have never encountered an elf prior, and they perceive her as possessing an extraordinary form of beauty. She requests that everyone remains silent and focuses their attention. Suhook is observing everything closely. The elf clarifies that she has consequently received a unique invitation from Korea to act as the primary educator for this foundational training program. She presents herself as Shahar Kola Luriat, a formidable fighter from Elvenheim, and expresses her enthusiasm for instructing the humans. Due to the extensive length of her full name, she requests that others simply refer to her as Shahar. Suhook believes the name resembles that of a puppy, making it charming. The young woman continually considers the fairy to be exceptionally attractive, and the auburn-haired individual appears to be rather unapproachable. Shahar states that it marks the inaugural instance of an elf participating in a program on Earth, so she anticipates that they will have inquiries. However, she will respond to only 3 questions. Immediately a hand is raised. It's the enthusiastic girl once more. Suhook is astonished to encounter an elementary school pupil present. Shahar expresses her appreciation for her vitality and inquires about her name. The young woman presents herself as Bak Ayun, aged 19. Listening to that leaves the other attendees astonished that an individual so youthful is undergoing training. Suhook experiences a slight sense of embarrassment, as the girl is, in fact, a high school pupil. In the meantime, the elf inquires about what her inquiry entails. Yet Ayun dedicates her moments to praising her own beauty, claiming it surpasses that of any individual or elf she has ever encountered, even though Shahar is the inaugural one. This results in the educator feeling puzzled. The young woman offers a subtle grin. Shahar states that it is quite an uncommon manner of expression, as rather than posing an inquiry, the girl simply praised her. The elf mentions that she is the inaugural member of the esteemed Kaliluriat lineage, and asserts that this is the reason she prefers to be regarded as a fighter rather than merely a female. Subsequently, she proceeds to the subsequent inquiry. Several additional attendees lift their hands, and she ultimately selects the intimidating crimson-haired individual. Shahar claims it's due to him raising his hand initially. Her decision astonishes the others. Observing. The man, Suhook, speculates whether he is somewhat antiquated in believing that tattoos do not leave a favorable impression. The auburn-haired individual presents himself as Jin Chang-hyuk, and he begins by noting that his inquiry may seem somewhat unusual. Inquires whether offenders are permitted to participate in the training, as he has come across information suggesting it is contingent upon the instructor's guidelines. Inquisitive, Shahar inquires about the nature of the offense he perpetrated. Slightly uncomfortable, Chang-hyuk admits that he pilfered a few items. Shahar, astonished, states she cannot endorse theft, and she assures him that it will not be employed unjustly against him there, and remarks that in Elvenheim, those who violate the rules have 2 options. The primary objective is to assist their family members. The alternative is to engage in combat on the front lines to safeguard it. Her words capture the focus of all. She informs Chang-hyuk that the rationale for his arrival is due to his selection of the alternative choice. The elf mentions that in her homeland it is referred to as Langdare, whereas on Earth it is known as Noble Atonement. Shahar claims that due to his transgression he must exert more effort than his peers, yet he should always remember his wrongdoing. She advises to keep it in mind and consistently conduct oneself with integrity, noting that it cannot be wiped away, yet that doesn't imply it cannot be pardoned. Her remarks resonated with the redhead. Chang-hyuk expresses his comprehension and extends his gratitude to her for it. With that, she inquires about the final question. Immediately, a hand is raised. Shahar is astonished by its speed and inquires about its name. This occasion features Yong Soo-hook, accompanied by a slight grin. The elf discloses that she is monitoring him, causing certain individuals ponder whether the two are acquainted. Somewhat dubious, the former emperor inquires whether she holds a personal fascination for him. Shahar responds by asking if that is the final query. However, Soo-hook insists otherwise, as he possesses something different. He inquires whether she is the sole educator responsible for training all the trainees present. Shahar declines and expresses her comprehension of his apprehension, clarifying that although she is the lead instructor, she is unable to instruct every subject independently. She mentions that there will be ordinary individuals providing support, and for the martial training, she is capable of personally guiding a group. Soo-hook believes she embodies both a school administrator and an educator simultaneously. Consequently, Xiaobei concludes the inquiries. Abruptly, a man claims he lacks confidence in the elf. Xiaobei merely observes the spectacle, inquisitive. The individual inquires whether he is mistaken for thinking this way, asserting that she is not human and therefore she should not be relied upon as the instructor. He claims that the elf is not a certified competitor in the nation like the other teachers, and based on her appearance, he questions whether she even possesses the ability to engage in combat. Self-assured, he expresses that she appears better matched for a realm entirely distinct from the battlefield. The elf is prepared to demonstrate her prowess to him. Shao. B states that if that is what he requires, then she will demonstrate it to him. Illuminated by an emerald energy, the elf extends her arm towards him. The individual senses, overwhelmed by the radiance. And she hardly requires that much exertion to bring everyone down. They become frightened when they are unable to maneuver their bodies. Regarding the instigator, he struggles to draw breath. Xiaobei asserts that demonstrating your capabilities is essential. Yet she also holds that self-discipline is equally vital. As a last caution, she states that the initial instance can be perceived as an error. However, if it occurs once more, she will exhibit no compassion. The man even urinates in his trousers like a frightened young child. She finds it somewhat amusing, yet something seizes her focus. Only one individual remained upright following her minor assault. The elf is astonished that she utilized that to daunt them. And yet the man still persisted, particularly for a level 1. That's when she realizes why she must monitor him closely, and she is convinced that in this manner he might already be engaged in combat. In the meantime, Soo-hook contemplates whether he ought to have feigned a collapse, as the situation became somewhat uncomfortable. For Shao, resolve and proficiency are distinct concepts, and rather than passing judgment on him, she chooses to observe him further. The rest are merely grateful that they can maneuver once more. Thus the elf concludes the introductions. She cautions that throughout the training phase, she expects not to witness any scowls on their faces. The newcomers feel somewhat daunted. Xiao pivots to depart, after informing them that she will see them in the forthcoming session. A new day arrives, and they are at the association edifice. The newcomers are in lectures learning about creatures. They present a being of the Delino classification. Soo-hook is not attentive during lessons, particularly as it has been quite a while since he last attended a class. He simply desires to engage in an authentic confrontation. His demeanor does not escape the attention of the chief instructor. A powerful surge of energy is unleashed towards him. The elf allows nothing to escape. Following the reprimand of the individual, despite his momentary lapse in attention, he contemplates whether he should have truly lost focus during the lesson. Nonetheless, Soo-hook never enjoyed being seated at a desk and engaging in study. Before long, something diverts his attention once more. Chung-hook appears, somewhat wary, scanning his surroundings. That prompts Soo-hook to believe he observed something. However, the former emperor reflects upon his observations and concludes that the auburn-haired individual is more reserved than he had initially perceived. Another newcomer faces consequences from Shao. She additionally admonishes Soo-hook, urging him to focus on the teacher's lesson. The former emperor perceives her as excessively severe and stern, convinced that the two of them will not harmonize. Ultimately, the session for the day concludes. The instructor urges them to remember to revise, as, inexplicably, individuals tend to fail the written examination each year. Feeling quite fatigued, the trainees concur with him. Enthusiastically, the instructor reflects that throughout his years of teaching theory, he has never encountered a class so concentrated. Xiaobei takes pride in her coworker's excellent performance. Su-hook gathers his belongings. At that moment, someone grabs his focus. All. Enthusiastic, Yiwan addresses him as Upata. Once more, he inquires whether she is a primary school pupil. The young woman shouts that she is in secondary school, and even refers to him as an elderly man. Then Su-hook recalls her mentioning that she was 19 years old. That's sufficient to trigger her once more. To be direct, the former emperor inquires about her intentions regarding him. A Yiwan remarks that on the day of Xiao's assault, he was the sole individual who remained upright, which astonishes him that she recognized it. Zhang Hook likewise acknowledges he witnessed it and found it astonishing. The young woman inquires of her older brother figure whether his heart is composed of iron, and wonders how he managed to withstand such hardship. Su-hook simply replies that he possesses a heart like everyone else, and that it was likely just a matter of fortune. The auburn-haired individual claims he is modest regarding it, and finds that exceptionally impressive. Seizing the opportunity, Su-hook inquires whether he was observing the entire class due to that, and the former thief expresses remorse, stating he was merely captivated. However, Su-hook asserts that he doesn't require an apology, and believes that the individual may not be as unfavorable as he initially presumed. Brimming with vitality, youthful Ai Yunsheng inquires if he would like to have lunch with her, playfully remarking that they form the inquisitive trio. However, the former emperor declines the invitation, stating that he must depart. The young woman feels it is unjust for him to utilize his talents to escape. Zhang Hook believes he possesses considerable charm, whereas the young woman perceives the elderly man as rather unkind. The instructional sessions span 30 days. This duration cannot be abbreviated or prolonged, as it adheres to the government's educational regulations. He simply desires to navigate a battlefield. However, upon learning that many individuals struggle with the examination, he is determined to prepare in order to excel. The former emperor expresses gratitude to the elf for rendering it unfeasible to become complacent. Additionally, he learned from the instructors that the course boasts a significant success rate. However, he is also aware that this does not guarantee that everyone will succeed. The examination isn't overly challenging, yet you cannot succeed without diligent preparation. Ai Yuan is terrified, expressing her belief in a curse that dictates that if one stumbles even a single time, they will perpetually experience failure. She finds this notion dreadful, and inquires of her oppa whether he senses his spirit quaking with dread. Growing weary, Su-hook advises her to avoid failure, and shares his suspicion about the reasons behind some individuals' shortcomings. His remarks pique the girl's intrigue. Consequently, the former emperor observes the unfolding situation. A group of individuals is organizing to share a meal and beverages, with one person even proposing they study intensively for the test in a hurried fashion. That helps the girl comprehend what he intended. Su-hook states that he is departing, and inquires if that is the reason she missed the study group. Ayuan believes that oppa is quite indifferent. The former emperor has already expressed his regrets, and additionally, prioritizing time with his family is of utmost importance to him. Furthermore, this represents the joy he struggled to reclaim, and he intends to avoid relinquishing it once more. A month went by, and before long, the day of the written examination arrived. Xiaobei Su-hook mentions that the results will be announced on the same day, which is causing him considerable anxiety. Ai Wan begins producing peculiar sounds, and the auburn-haired woman inquires why she must vocalize that when he is already feeling anxious enough. The young woman inquires whether vocalizing it will genuinely lead him to feel that way. Appearing uncomfortable, he affirms it, essentially providing the girl with ammunition. Thus, she begins to irritate him by creating the repeated thudding noise. Xiaobei Su-hook urges them to be silent, as the outcomes are about to be revealed. Xiaobei Su-hook continually disputes with the bothersome girl. Among the roster, names appear such as Yuri, Su-hook, Xiaobei, Jin-A, So-hei. Ai Yuan rejoices in successfully completing the written examination. The former emperor remarks that she consistently appeared to be goofing off, and inquires about the way she achieved such an impressive score. Additionally, beaming, the young woman declares that a mastermind performs more effectively when unobserved. Although he finds it absurd, Su-hook concedes that she isn't entirely mistaken. Abruptly, something calls for his focus. Xiaobei Su-hook is weeping with joy because he has succeeded, elated that he can confidently share the news with his siblings. Ultimately, that brings joy to the other two, on his behalf. Observing this, Shu-hook comes to understand that, despite his unfavorable initial perception, the red-haired individual is a decent person. As they drew nearer, the former emperor discovered his narrative. Xiaobei Shu-hook is the sole individual responsible for providing sustenance to his 3 younger siblings. Due to alcohol, his father passed away, and his mother, as a result of the abuse she endured in their household, decided to flee and was never spotted again. From his sophomore year in high school, he has looked after the children, and others claim that his experiences made him appear like a troublemaker. However, Shu-hook understands how accountable and kind-hearted he truly is, and that his detention resulted from stealing to provide for his siblings. However, he was liberated shortly thereafter. Following that, he began laboring immediately to settle his financial obligations, demonstrating that he is an honorable individual. Shu-hook expresses that he has endured considerable challenges, and given his increased confidence in manual labor, he ought to challenge himself further. Jang-hook expresses gratitude to him for all that he has done. Somewhat reserved, the former emperor inquires about his own contribution, given that Jang-hook exerted all the energy to arrive independently. The auburn-haired individual then expresses that witnessing his diligent efforts inspired her, and she conveys her gratitude once more. Su-hook asserts that sycophancy will prove ineffective. Zhang extends his congratulations to all, and announces that the trio is set to commence their hands-on training. Jang-hook also expresses gratitude to the young woman, as she exerted considerable effort daily assisting him with his studies after school. Upon hearing that, Shu-hook is quite taken aback, recognizing that she had been sincere all along. The auburn-haired individual's phone begins to ring. He informs his younger sibling that he has succeeded, mentioning that the most challenging phase has concluded, and he will give his utmost effort. While listening, Shu-hook thinks he should bring him back down to earth, but he's sure he'll be fine. Although not everything was straightforward, out of 49 contenders, merely 42 succeeded, and he learned that the typical pass rate is 50%. He holds that this is due to the significant influence Instructor Shaw exerted, whom he regards as an outstanding educator. Many individuals believe they would truly struggle to succeed. The elf observes him closely. Su-hook understands that the true test commences next week, with hands-on training, and that is poised to be quite intriguing. And just like that, the week whisked away. Shaw will oversee Team 8, and the trio is already present, prepared for anything. Shan-hook expresses that it's intriguing and inquires about how everyone came to be gathered in that place. The elf declares she individually selected each team, believing it was preferable to assemble individuals with comparable dispositions. However, she claims that being part of Team 8 was destiny, as it was chosen by chance, and asserts that it must be a divine gift from the world tree leading them. Thrilled as ever, Yijin declares that this truly is fate. Sha offers a slight grin and remarks that it is undoubtedly a significant fate. She then states that this does not imply she will exhibit any compassion during training. That leaves both of them quite apprehensive about what lies ahead. In the meantime, Shu-hook contemplates whether she is on the verge of instituting stringent regulations, as she recognizes they are on the cusp of engaging in actual warfare. Shaw begins by stating that they will be entering the portal, and inquires with the auburn-haired individual to clarify what it entails. In a few phrases, Shan-hook declares it's a gateway to a different realm. The elf concurs. Nevertheless, not every portal is identical. She then inquires of Cadet Shu-hook whether he recalls the lecture from the previous week. The ex-emperor begins by stating that gateways are categorized into 2 varieties, amiable and antagonistic. Within this group, the antagonistic ones are classified from 1 to 13. With higher numbers indicating greater peril. Shaw is delighted that those with the least concentration are responding effectively, and cautions that for their training, they will be entering a level 1 adversarial gateway. Yi Yongxing becomes extremely enthusiastic upon hearing that. The elf inquires of the girl what she is aware of regarding it. Yi Yongxing claims it hosts less formidable creatures and a diminished concentration, which is why it serves as a practice dungeon for aspirants like them. Shaw inquires if she is correct in stating that it is indeed quite simple, and the young woman concurs. With a chilling gaze, the elf inquires whether that implies the creatures lurking within the dungeon are incapable of slaying individuals. The pair is at a loss for words thus. Shu-hook is the individual who responds affirmatively that they are capable. V. The elf asserts that he is right and demonstrates that this is the reason they emit something of that nature. Then Shaw exhibits lethal intent, a force that is excessively potent and hazardous. Yet Shu Hook appears to be the sole individual who is at ease with it. The elf is astonished that he remains resolute in its presence. In the meantime, the ex-emperor contemplates whether he ought to feign a struggle against it, to some extent, which is precisely what he undertakes. However, the Squad 8 mentor indicates that he does not have to feign. She asserts that it may appear strange, but trainees like them must acclimate to it. Shaw asserts that if they are unable to adjust to the impression they project, then eventually they may be eliminated more swiftly and effortlessly than they anticipate. The trio comprehends her intentions. After observing everything, Shaw remarks that, with the exception of one individual, they all appear to have adequately prepared. She expresses that she did not anticipate everyone to tolerate the murderous intent, and thus inquires if any of them have previously engaged in combat. Shu Hook responds that he has experienced something akin to that. However, Shaw asserts that it wasn't merely comparable enough to tolerate, and that he must be concealing something. She states she is unbothered by a man with mysteries, but appreciates that he possesses the ability and endurance to manage it. Subsequently, Team 8 ventures into the thoroughfares. Shaw asserts that if they sprint at maximum velocity, they can arrive at the destination, the Mapo Station Gateway, within an hour, and Shu Hook inquires whether they are indeed racing there. The elf then expresses her unfamiliarity with public transit and admits she cannot operate a vehicle. Furthermore, she suggests that running serves as an excellent warm-up prior to a confrontation. She informs Shu Hook that he is the captain and ought to direct his comrades, and cautions that in 1 hour they will convene at Mapo Station. Shaw subsequently advances, departing from their company. Faced with limited options, the only alternative remaining is to flee. Yet Ayun Cheng expresses her reluctance to proceed. Regardless, the men abandon her. At last, they reach the rendezvous point. Ayun and Chung Hook are fatigued, whereas the former emperor appears entirely unfazed. The elf is already present, anticipating their arrival, and remarks that they reached the destination more swiftly than she had anticipated, achieving a remarkable outcome, just 10 minutes shy. They are prepared to step into the gateway. Chung Hook remarks that he believed he was on the brink of dying from fatigue, and the young woman finds herself in a similar predicament. Shu Hook observes that previously they appeared exceedingly strained due to the pressure, but at this moment, owing to the jog, their muscles appear more relaxed. As a result, he contemplates whether it was all deliberate. In that case, he believes the elf excels as a mentor, and that the primary designation was well-deserved. Shaw summons her trainees. She cautions that the 10 minutes have elapsed. The elf inquires whether they are prepared to enter, and filled with enthusiasm, they all concur. Then, she presses a certain key, and concealed portal reveals itself, and she proclaims that they should advance without delay. Chung Hook and the young woman appear somewhat dubious. The designation of the top-tier dungeon situated at Mapo Station is Mugie, which translates to a realm without limits. During his research, Shu Hook discovered something intriguing. Numerous realms exist in this universe referred to as Mugie, a domain forsaken by all, deemed unworthy of possessing a name. Shu Hook learned that even in such locations, there are occasions when advanced civilizations are uncovered that once flourished in the distant past. Inevitably, that prompted the ex-emperor to contemplate an idea. He contemplates whether Mugie is a realm that emerged from the ruin of another. Shu Hook is of the opinion that this could be true. For him, that is going to be truly intriguing. The location features a barren terrain and a crimson sky, decidedly unwelcoming. At the entrance lies the gateway, and TM8 traverses through it. This is Mugie, following the intrusion into Mapo Station, with the foundational temperature remaining below 2 degrees. Although it appears to be the onset of chaos, Zhao cautions them to exercise caution, as they remain unaware of when the adversary may emerge. The creatures inhabiting that region are referred to as Nero. They resemble canines and stand approximately 3 meters in height, and as one would anticipate from a being of that nature, their primary method of assault is through biting. Their key characteristics include their capacity for significant leaps and the tendency to travel in clusters of 3 to 5. Although it is a level 1 dungeon, these creatures can pose a challenge for novice, awakened individuals. However, for Shu Hook, they do not appear to be a danger. The system interface appears. Due to the preparation phase for the written assessment, his statistics enhanced slightly overall, and most crucially, his awakening is formidable. An extra 20% enhancement effect is implemented. Although he found it odd, the augmentation was unexpectedly beneficial. He is also aware that in relation to the other awakened individuals, his fighting prowess is exceptionally elevated. When factoring in his comprehension of martial arts and combat experience, his actual capability could rival that of elite warriors. It merely required a month to regain all that strength. There's no justification for lacking confidence in a Tier 1 dungeon. Even when absorbed in contemplation, he succeeds in noticing something. Su-hook requests that everyone cease their activities. He mentions that visitors are arriving. Before long, the beings are observed approaching them. Chung-hook remarks that there are 5 individuals present. And Char asserts that with his expertise, he ought to be capable of dismantling them without inflicting any harm, and advises him to remain calm and concentrate. She then instructs Squad 8 to prepare for battle. The squad leader advises them to refrain from hurrying and to advance solely when the creatures are within their line of sight. However, Su-hook has grown weary of that, seeking a touch of amusement by defeating them solo and at a rapid pace. Nevertheless, he adheres to instructions. Furthermore, his colleagues lack arms. He learned that they supply them during practical exercises if necessary. He opted out of taking one, as he favors engaging in combat unarmed, and he contemplates whether the other 2 possess any abilities that do not require weapons. Regardless, the dog-like creatures are approaching at full velocity. Following. Biding her time, Char proclaims that the moment to engage has arrived. Abruptly, metallic talons emerge from Chang-hook. The auburn-haired individual charges directly towards the creatures. Su-hook observes the entire scene, captivated. In the meantime, Ion functions as the caretaker or auxiliary. Observing this, he understands that it is also his moment to take action. The ex-emperor is enveloped in his azure radiance, employing the motion method, Gale Stride. Su-hook is so swift that he overtakes Chung-hook, who is significantly ahead of him. He intends to utilize the training to assess his present state. The initial creature attempts to assault. He swiftly evades the snap. Su-hook employs the palm method, steel-crushing palm shockwave assault. Following that, the penetrating strike breakthrough. He concludes the encounter with the initial beast, and another swiftly appears. This one is poised to sink its extremely sharp fangs into him. Su-hook leaps vigorously, evading the beast's assault in such a manner. The ex-emperor exploits that to launch a counterstrike, unleashing a tornado kick. The creature is swiftly vanquished, crushed against the earth like a worn-out rug. His colleagues are quite astonished. Likewise, Char harbors doubts about being merely an intern, and even contemplates whether he is truly human. In a brief span, the ex-emperor eliminated 2, yet the remaining beings persist. The creature launches an assault. Su-hook glances at it. He then shifts from his position, confronting the creature directly. The being appears taken aback. Subsequently, Su-hook employs his ironclad staff, fundamental methods, assaulting relentlessly with the link-severing strike. The creature is shredded by the previous sovereign. Observing the altercation left her astounded. Char believes she ought to be feeling avaricious, yet in truth, this is driving her insane, over the individual she yearns to bring to Elvenheim. Zhu. Hook contemplates whether this is all a result of his reacquisition of a combat discipline he had previously perfected. Given that his physical condition is surpassing his expectations, he deduces that the system assistants must be contributing as well, and he realizes that in this manner he could approach Huan and be among the initial ones. However, all he has remaining are the final 2 beings. Su-hook would eagerly dismantle them all. Yet this is a collective combat exercise, and it would undermine the purpose if he handled everything single-handedly. For the ex-emperor, this is merely an experiment. Yet his companions require genuine battle exposure. Both of them are utterly astonished by Su-hook's demeanor. Hook swiftly believes that his colleague is providing them an opportunity. Thus, once more, he conjures his keen talons. The auburn-haired individual captures the focus of the lingering creature. He bides his time eagerly, for the beings to arrive. His talons begin to radiate a fiery crimson. In an instant, the being executes a swift maneuver. Theum cautions Oppa that the creature is assaulting from the rear. Its incisors are primed to sink into him. His arm is engulfed by the gigantic maw. Shuhook ponders when the object actually shifted. Several droplets of crimson fluid descend to the earth. However, the learner is prepared to confront. Ayun mends his injuries with her expertise. He is truly astonished by the impact. Observing. Zuhook seeks to ascertain whether it is a restorative ability, which is positive. However, they remain in jeopardy. Additional creatures are encroaching. These appear even more formidable, allowing them not a moment to catch their breath. At the very least, they've adjusted. And now, it's time to tidy up the chaos. Team 8 now battles alongside one another. The surroundings near the station are tranquil. At last, they emerge from that place. The young woman and the auburn-haired girl are fatigued and wish to return home. Shuhook understands. Ultimately, they engaged in 6 confrontations during their inaugural authentic combat experience. With a grin, the elf commends them on their excellent efforts and remarks that Earth's Awakened are truly remarkable, just as she had listened. The group fails to comprehend why she is abruptly behaving in this manner. Shara claims that apart from the decline in endurance, their fighting abilities have enhanced, which is typically unattainable. As usual, the newcomers fail to comprehend. However, for a prior sovereign of the whole continent, it was trivial, and he regarded it merely as a skill, although he speculated whether the system had contributed to that. Shara expresses her confidence that they will all soon have the opportunity to partake in an actual combat assignment. And, as an educator, she experiences a sense of pride. Ultimately, she informs them that they are free to return home. That truly exhilarates Chunghook and Aiyun. Nevertheless, she summons Suhuk as she wishes to communicate something. The man pivots to observe her request. She asserts that based on her observations, his combat technique appears not to depend on a system, and is instead more organized, akin to an authentic martial discipline. Shara mentions that if he feels uneasy about the inquiry, it's perfectly acceptable to refrain from responding. However, he expresses that he genuinely doesn't object. Consequently, Shuhook verifies that he has been practicing martial arts. This aligns with what the elf anticipated. Yet she recalls that in the past few years, the individual was in a state of unconsciousness, and she ponders how he could have acquired knowledge so swiftly. Frankly, she doesn't fully accept it, but she recognizes that the cosmos is expansive, and there are numerous phenomena beyond her comprehension. Shuhook inquires if anything is amiss, and she replies in the negative. She merely regarded him as an exceptional intellect. The ex-emperor claims he has encountered that expression numerous times, but it was on the landmass of Huan. Zhaobai mentioned that what stood out was his concern for ensuring that his colleagues could acquire experience as well. With a slight grin, he claims he is the chief. The elf retorts, asserting that merely assigning someone a duty does not guarantee their ability to fulfill it adequately. According to her, he is a delightful individual, departing the previous sovereign with a flushed complexion, attempting to conceal the effect the praise had on him. He asserts that the elf is embellishing. Xiaobai is genuinely benevolent in her expressions. The erstwhile emperor cannot cease contemplating how astonishingly exquisite the elf is a splendor he has never encountered, not even in Huan. However, this is not the moment to contemplate that. Moreover, there is a matter of greater significance. Today's pursuit was undeniably gratifying, and he feels increasingly enthusiastic for additional adventures. After. Not too long ago, he was regarded as the most formidable martial artist in the annals of the Huan continent's history. He recognizes that he is recuperating swiftly, and they still possess that relentless yearning. Yet Suhuk ought to refrain from hastening matters. Even if he is somewhat restless, he understands he merely has to proceed gradually. A tune resonates throughout the picturesque meadow. Suhuk transports an unusual being. At this rate, he is capable of earning 10 million each month. They are currently in the 3rd day of combat instruction, and the squad has successfully completed multiple 1st and 2nd tier open dungeons on their initial attempt. They additionally profited by marketing the byproducts generated from the procedure. The physiques of creatures possess certain utilitarian benefits, akin to those of terrestrial animals. Thus, Suhuk succeeded in accumulating a substantial sum of money. However, at present, he intends to conceal it from his relatives. Regardless, It isn't too late to disclose the information when the moment is appropriate. Ayun shouts to her mentor, anxious, and although it's peculiar, he agrees. The young woman remarks that he appears quite thrilled, particularly given the circumstances. Observing the moment with a hint of embarrassment, the ex-emperor acknowledges that she seems to have a point. Soo-hook continues to persuade himself that it ultimately revolves around the finances, after all. Out of the blue, Shower appears behind them and remarks that the present circumstances appear somewhat perilous. Ayun expresses that she envies the ease with which her colleagues adjusted, particularly the ginger-haired individual who appeared to face considerable difficulties initially. Profound. Soo-hook is aware that all of the man's actions are motivated by financial gain. A projectile hurtles towards them. The ex-emperor's gaze is vigilant to all surroundings. Preoccupied, Chung-hook states that even the subsequent series are not particularly significant, and Soo-hook seizes the projectile just before it strikes his companion. An occurrence. Something unusual is occurring with the item. He senses a sensation akin to vitality. Hook states that it's not merely a goblin projectile, it's a human missile. Two individuals arrive, one of them wielding a spear. They are astonished that the beings have already been eradicated. Soo-hook believes they belong to Team 3 and seeks to comprehend their presence. They assert that they are lacking one creature needed to advance. An individual approaches, inquiring whether this is Squad 8. Jen Chae-yun from the group appears to be quite captivated by the elf. Shower inquires whether they are accompanied by instructor John Soo-jung, and expresses that she has no recollection of asking for assistance. She is curious about what they are engaged in there. Tim Chul-ik inquires whether a formal request is truly necessary, contending that it's more advantageous to pursue their goals collaboratively. He asserts that she is not their mentor. Ayon finds this absurd and questions whether he failed to recognize that her Apo-chang hook was jeopardized due to their actions. Chae Ayon expresses her regrets regarding the incident, asserting that it was unintentional. However, the elf appears vexed by the entire situation. Another individual arrives and states that the group has already expressed remorse for the incident. John Soo-jung from the Yamugi Guild inquires whether she would like to deliver a lecture to her team. Shower asserts that this is clear. Ultimately, he remains in control and has the responsibility to instruct and mentor all the apprentices. The lady expresses that she feels chilly, akin to the bloom of demise, and acknowledges that children are prone to errors. Shower asserts that even if that is the justification, it remains an unmistakable menace. Therefore, a sincere apology is warranted, in addition to the fact that they meddled in the conflict. Upon hearing this, the woman remarks that it is precisely her obstinacy that dissuades her from conversing with elves, and cautions her against overstepping boundaries with one another. The shower serves as a reminder that she is the chief instructor of the entire training initiative, and the sole individual overstepping boundaries is herself. Soo-young claims she doesn't comprehend, behaving with an air of superiority akin to a curmudgeonly elder, and instructs them to remove all the items. To her, they are all repugnant. Prior to this, departing, the woman remarks that if she finds it unsatisfactory, she can simply voice her grievances to the Emoji Association. This infuriates the elf. She shouts after the woman, who remains completely oblivious. The sun is nearly absent from the heavens, and they have returned to solid ground. Jung-hyuk astonishes him by expressing gratitude for the earlier incident. With a faint grin, Soo-hyuk remarks that it was the appropriate action to take. The auburn-haired individual expresses that he will someday extend an invitation to dine together. Clumsily, the ex-emperor responds that it would be rather inconvenient. Abruptly, Ayoan appears, inquiring whether they plan to abandon her once more, expressing disbelief at their actions. The individuals appear astonished to see her present, as they believed the young woman had departed. Ayoan descends the staircase in a fit of rage, expressing that she merely visited the restroom and anticipated the three of them to depart as a group. In an effort to atone, Soo-hyuk proposes that they share a meal. Before long, the following day dawns, and Soo-hyuk is already eliminating the dungeon creatures, leading to an increase in his level. With each occurrence, he becomes more powerful. He feels increasingly prepared for an authentic confrontation, and realizes that at this rate, he will return to an elevated standard in martial arts, and be poised to inform his family. However, at this moment, something appears amiss. The teacher, intercepts an arrow on his behalf. Char shouts at Soo-hyuk, asserting that she had spotted her long ago. She is aware of the woman's whereabouts. Soo-hyuk arrives expressing remorse, yet asserts it wasn't an error. Char Yellen states she received directives to fire in that direction, yet was unaware of their presence. She expresses regret for this. This has sparked a minor commotion among her teammates. And the elf remarks that it appears to be an instigation. Soo-hyuk counters that they instigated her initially, as she discovered that she reached out to the guild leader due to the events of the previous day. Char asserts that if an individual perpetrates an offense, it is only right that they be held accountable. Then, an atmosphere envelops the woman, who claims there is no means to communicate with the elf, and inquires if she should simply eliminate them all. Remaining composed, Char expresses her awareness that the instructor harbors a dislike for her, yet the situation is escalated far beyond what is tolerable. The elf inquires whether the cause of all this is Shangmun-hyuk, as she has heard that Soo-hyuk harbors affections for him. That infuriates Soo-hyuk, prompting her to tell her to be quiet. Thus, Soo-hyuk comes to understand that he is entangled in a romantic conflict. In the meantime, Char asserts that the Imugi Guild will not safeguard her indefinitely, prompting her to suggest that she should express regret and withdraw while there's still an opportunity. However, in the manner of a provocation, the other lady inquires whether, if she refrains, the elf will eliminate her. Char refutes this assertion, but mentions that she will face repercussions. Irritated, Soo-hyuk inquires who she believes she is to act in that manner. Subsequently, she unleashes her attack upon them. Her companion is taken aback by the employment of sinister methods. None of them shift, even with the force approaching directly towards them. Char asserts that following this, there's no turning back. She's enveloped in a radiant glow and counterattacks her adversary. Soo-hyuk inquires, astonished by how effortlessly the elf was able to thwart the assault. She cannot retreat now that she has come this far, and furthermore, due to the other's standing, she is aware that her life is not in jeopardy. Subsequently, the woman shouts for Squad 3 to assault Squad 8. Soo-hyuk inquires if it is essential they ought to fracture their extremities. They are somewhat surprised by the directive, believing it to be an unfavorable notion. With a malevolent gaze, the woman inquires whether they are not interested in becoming part of the Imugi Guild. Soo-hyuk asserts that an arm or a leg will suffice, urging them to deliver impressive outcomes. That is sufficient to secure their consent. Subsequently, the three initiate the offensive. Char is genuinely self-assured, even in the face of danger, which infuriates Soo-hyuk. Then she shouts that she will demonstrate to the elf her treasured apprentices being overwhelmed. In the meantime, Soo-hyuk observes that the team includes a fighter and a marksman, yet he remains unaware of the identity of the third member. Abruptly, the earth begins to fracture. Sha-woot undergoes a peculiar metamorphosis, becoming even more powerful. Departing from Team 8 quite astonished, they will need to confront the individual utilizing the transformation. Prepared for confrontation, Soo-hyuk declares that he will take on the colossal boar in the archer's position and requests protection from the other adversary. The large fellow calls out for him to approach, proclaiming he'll shatter him into fragments. Soo-hyuk evades the initial strike, shifting, swift and leaping to the opposite side. The large man spins around and delivers another blow, but it poses no challenge to a former sovereign. Soo-hyuk employs the technique of iron, devastating grip. He then directs the blow towards Jung-wook, resulting in a jolt as their energies clash. The large individual is propelled backwards. Jung-wook expels his own bodily fluid from his mouth. Soo-hyuk seizes the opportunity to mock him and claims that he genuinely absorbed the blow. The large individual concedes that his rival is significantly quicker, prompting him to resort to an alternate approach. He shouts to his companion, Chae-yeon. The young lady is prepared. She unleashes a potent charged projectile at the man. Soo-hyuk remains motionless in place. The arrow strikes him and detonates in a burst of illumination. Jung-wook possesses a self-assured grin. The haze gradually dissipates. Then they discover the arrow merely struck the earth. A voice refers to him as a swine. Suddenly, Soo-hyuk appears unexpectedly, inquiring about what he seeks. The ex-emperor swiftly descends upon the formidable figure with a powerful fist. Jung-wook collapses to the floor, rendered unconscious. Chae-yeon is astonished that her companion succumbed so effortlessly. The ex-emperor possesses a fearsome appearance. Frightened, the girl implores him to stay back. The individual propels his leg through the atmosphere with his proficient wind surge rebound strike, a distant assault that topples the girl. Observing her state, Soo-hyuk emits an uncomfortable chuckle, believing he may have gone a tad too far. He perceives a voice pleading for pardon. It's Cholek, imploring the crimson-haired figure with talons to exhibit compassion, asserting that he had no desire to engage in this, and that they were merely coerced. Soo-hyuk seizes him before anything transpires. The previous sovereign instructs him to relax. However, Chon-hyuk asserts that he is not a creature of monstrosity. He is an individual. Abruptly, as if transformed, he expresses regret. Your adversary is sprawled on the floor. Jung-wook has returned to his usual state, while the girl continues to tremble in agony. In the meantime, the team leader is unable to comprehend what just transpired. Cher continues to have faith in her team's abilities. Soo-hyuk inquires if it has come to an end. Either. Thus, there is barely anything remaining of Team 3. A gathering takes place at the Bakehouse and Association, within the office of the Vice President. The individual receives the information regarding the clash that occurred between the squads. He inquires if everyone comprehends the circumstances. All were astounded by the visuals presented in the footage. With their gaze fixed on the team captains, the deputy states that typically Cher would oversee the meeting, but due to recent events, he and Sai-will assume control for the time being. Initially, he expresses his regret regarding the removal of Team 3's leader, but he believes that attributing fault to the trainees is not the appropriate course of action. Commander Lee from Unit 11 claims that only a single individual succeeded in overcoming the complete opposing unit. However, the alternative perspective suggests that although he believes Sai-will may have exceeded appropriate limits, he maintains it was a matter of self-defense. So Young states that Squad 8 emerged unscathed, whereas her trainees suffered significant damage. The deputy asserts that she is responsible for instigating the altercation over trivial affection, provoking the woman's annoyance with his remarks. He continues by stating that he is taking on the role of the educator and guiding the situation. Therefore, he advises her to be cautious with her language. Lee reminds him of the pecking order and inquires whether he is genuinely going to overlook this. The deputy refutes it, asserting that this is precisely why everyone is present. They are there to cast their ballots. There is solely one apprentice undergoing evaluation, and that is Jung Soo-hyuk. He asserts that the youngster is not merely an exceptional trainee, yet also possesses remarkable skill. The vice inquires of all those who concur with penalizing him to lift their hands, yet solely one individual does. And even at that moment, he diminishes it once the others gaze at him. Numerous individuals appear strained in the space, irritated. Lee inquires what their issue is and why they're remaining silent. Sayul states that merely 2 individuals desire the boy to be reprimanded. The subsequent conversation revolves around the role of Chief Instructor Shahar. He proposes dismissing the elf and assuming her position, thereby securing a substantial portion of the votes in support. Consequently, Shahar is relegated to a standard instructor position and is additionally penalized 100 million won, which will be contributed to the organization. Sayul inquires whether the elf has anything to express regarding it, but Shahar replies negatively, stating she thinks it wasn't a particularly respectable contest. Therefore, she acknowledges the consequences, which frustrates her adversary due to her willingness to embrace it. Thus, Shahar Khan inquires whether that might be somewhat excessive, but Sayul contends that the statement is reasonable, and once more inquires if there are any dissenting opinions. Once more, the lady declares that this is absurd. She requests an individual to express their thoughts, asserting that, in her view, this is not merely ridicule. The rest appear excessively anxious to respond. Sayul grins at the woman's remarks. He remarks that the dark cloud has become excessively self-important following all that has occurred. Thus, Shahar Khan angrily refers to him as a scoundrel. In reaction, the newly appointed lead instructor pounds his fist on the desk. Sayul inquires if she is aware of the implications of casually mentioning a guild's name in that manner. He asserts that instructing cadets signifies nurturing the future of Korea. Moreover, it is a noble responsibility to safeguard the planet. With an air of authority about him, he claims she tarnished the endeavor over a trivial romantic dispute. As a consequence, Sayul declares that from that point forward, she and the Emoji Guild are prohibited from teaching responsibilities for a duration of 3 years. Nonetheless, Shujang inquires who granted him the authority to speak in such a manner. Sayul responds that he acted in his capacity as the overseer of the 56th Trainee Initiative. One of the educators inquires whether they ought not to cast their votes on that matter, prompting his concurrence, as there remains a democratic system in the nation. Sayul states they will resolve it through a majority ballot, then inquires if they prefer Baekdosan or Emoji. It is widely recognized that Baekdosan stands out as the finest among the trio of guilds, leading the man to contemplate that he has wagered on the incorrect contender, resulting in a complete loss for Emoji. Individuals remarked that the gathering was fervent, and that they had never witnessed Sayul in such a furious state, expressing curiosity about Emoji's fate. One of them notes that they also discussed Suyuk, questioning whether they should not enlist him promptly due to his impressive history of achievements. As the duo is engrossed in conversation, the former emperor observes the others. He is eager to uncover what transpired during the assembly, yet his interest is minimal as he intends to continue battling. Additional events transpired throughout the night. Following extensive training and battlefield encounters, Suyuk has been growing more formidable. He is prepared to commence the craft of harmonizing the celestial and terrestrial realms, which are linked by a solitary strand. Thus they are two, yet simultaneously one. Similarly, they can also manifest as three elements. The vitality initiates in the lower chamber and traverses through the Rin and Do pathways, referred to as the major circulation. Although it is challenging due to his expertise on the mythical land, Suyuk successfully navigates it, and he has ultimately fulfilled his task. The channels were activated, and all toxins were purged, resulting in his optimal state. Through the window, he receives a notification that he has obtained a level 5 clandestine martial discipline, along with the technique of harmonizing heaven and earth, and that a new metamorphosis has occurred within his body. Suyuk also underwent a metamorphosis into a cohesive shape, and with the enhancements, he ultimately made his initial stride ahead, and he will demonstrate it in a subsequent training session. Something scuttles swiftly beneath the earth. A frightening creature with numerous, enormous fangs emerges to the surface. Having restored the harmony of heaven and earth, Suyuk now aims to reclaim his movement technique. The being advances nearer and nearer to the assembly, as it is an arid region. The grit rendered it difficult to see distinctly. Without pausing to be consumed, Suyuk initiates the assault with a steel-smashing strike. Total detachment, striking the beast with unwavering determination, utilizing 42 out of 100 of his intrinsic strength. Suyuk feels apprehensive, as the energy is substantial, yet the internal expenditure is considerable. Additional beings begin to emerge, ensconced in an energy that envelops his form. He thinks he is not yet utilizing his skill to its fullest potential. The diminutive glow expands further, appearing as a vibrant azure blaze. Suyuk prepares for his subsequent action. Subsequently, the portal reveals an extraordinary revelation. The recently uncovered method of the 8 Tragram steps. The former emperor is already lifting his fist to strike anyone who obstructs his path. Halting the initial creature with his blow, the being is propelled backward by the collision. His companions observe the altercation, apprehensive. Ayun remarks that the elderly man operates on an entirely different caliber for this endeavor, while Chang believes it's unattainable to achieve such prowess. Sharper perceives that his maneuvers have become more precise, and that his energy utilization has enhanced. Astounded, she ponders whether the youth truly became that formidable in such a brief period. Returning to the battle, the two beasts remaining appear even more formidable. Suyuk maintains his self-assured demeanor, evading each strike with ease. The former sovereign adopts a position for the fresh assault, utilizing the sanguine demon fist, striking each creature's vulnerabilities with merely his fingertips, followed by a gory eruption. Suyuk doesn't even glance behind. Reflecting on the past, he senses that something is amiss. At that moment, he comprehends that he overcame all the beings on his own. Suyuk emits an uncomfortable chuckle, realizing that yet again he monopolized all the enjoyment. Before he realized it, the fortnight of active combat drills had concluded. In his address, Sayul expresses that all individuals exerted considerable effort. Only the mischief makers from Team 3 failed to succeed. This significant endorsement wasn't unprecedented, but it was certainly uncommon. Suyuk recognizes that, in general, the group's performance was outstanding. Sharper commends her team for their excellent efforts. She proclaims they will no longer be referred to as mere apprentices, asserting that their outstanding achievements will secure them exceptional opportunities. Continuing in her address, the elf asserts that the course they select relies solely on their own decisions. However, as their mentor, she has a perspective to share. Shar expresses that while the occasion may not be noble, the readiness they exhibit for the challenges of this world is inherently commendable. In conclusion, She conveys her desire that they make decisions they will not later lament. And that concludes her remarks. Wen Yingqing is endeavoring to restrain her intense feelings. Yet, she stumbles and rushes into the embrace of her stunning mentor. The young woman expresses that, were it not for the elf, she wouldn't have exerted herself so diligently. Char feels an immense sense of pride in her. She expresses that she was genuinely delighted to encounter everyone, and that she regards it as a privilege to be in their company at this moment. With tear-filled eyes, Wen Yingqing inquires when they will reunite, and asks the elf if she possesses a telephone. Char contemplates it, and with a broad grin declares that, if destiny permits, the breeze will carry tidings of her. Cheng asserts he has a statement to make. The auburn-haired individual begins by recalling that he is an offender. He recounts the initial day the elf informed him that transforming into an awakened being was a path to salvation and dignity. With a faint smile, she indicates that she recalls. Yet he discloses that it lacks integrity, as he never possessed such honorable motives. Weeping Cheng claims he merely aimed to generate income. He claims that throughout his entire existence, he had never experienced such thoughts. The auburn-haired individual continually asserts that he could have toiled diligently in a conventional occupation, yet he opted for the simpler route. Upon listening to everything, Xiaobei expresses that she has never experienced embarrassment regarding him, even when they practiced alongside one another. The elf proclaims that the origin of his quest is inconsequential, and that, in any case, he ought not to be bound by it. Amplifying the intensity, Xiao refers to him as Lang Dare, and urges him to keep that in mind. She expresses that there is no longer a cause to weep with remorse, for the yearning to safeguard will bestow genuine atonement. Ultimately, she expresses that she will be caring for him. She then pivots towards Suhyuk. The ex-emperor expresses that it was a privilege to battle alongside her, while Xiao remains silent in response. Gripping his hand, she expresses her desire to encounter him on the front lines. It was a bright, lovely day for a goodbye, and all that remained was to complete the formal awakened documentation. In Korea, these individuals are classified from 1st to 13th place. At the 13th position, which denotes the highest tier, there exists merely one person, while the 12th tier comprises 5 individuals. Together, these 6 figures constitute the essential strength that safeguards and guides the nation. Suhyuk becomes intrigued about their characteristics. Typically, most trainees attain the initial level. In the meantime, this information is handled by the orb. The man panics upon viewing the information displayed on the monitor. Thus, the ex-emperor is merely at level 6. They referred to those who attained the mythical 13th tier as the apex of humankind. Among this elite was a prodigy who achieved the 4th tier immediately after completing his training in his early 20s. A solitary fighter without an affiliation, he single-handedly vanquished innumerable portals. And that individual is Bayek Muhak. In South Korea, he was an unparalleled occurrence, even on an international level. Extremely few had ever exhibited such rapid expansion. At this moment, Suhyuk has achieved a result that surpasses even Bayek Muhak. The gentleman requests him to hold on for a brief moment, as he must complete the final documentation before granting his hunting permit. In the meantime, the ex-emperor believes circumstances have surpassed his expectations, as the enlightened on the planet appears more formidable than he envisioned. However, subsequently, he recalls that the Dimensional Coalition assessed humanity's capability as moderate, with the elves scored slightly above that. The celestial beings governing the alliance of the celestial domain were deemed as top tier. Their most formidable adversaries were the demons, which prompts him to contemplate the prospect of humanity confronting those entities. However, Suhyuk prefers not to dwell on it excessively. Ultimately, this entire ranking system is merely a benchmark established by the celestial beings. Reflecting further, he realizes that Earth is advancing at an astonishing rate, significantly quicker than the other continents, and he understands that surpassing boundaries on this planet is indeed feasible. At last, his permit is completed, and to enroll, he merely needs to utilize the wristband. The object is positioned on his wrist without delay. Before long, a brilliant illumination is radiated. Suhyuk is captivated by the enchantment. A gentleman elucidates that it is crafted by diminutive artisans and imbued with magic by the elves. Suhyuk is thoroughly impressed. Out of the blue, a voice from behind the man remarks that it's delightful to finally make his acquaintance. Soo-hyuk pivots and discovers a crimson-haired silhouette, clad in an exceptionally vivid suit. In a state of confusion, the previous ruler inquires about his identity. The gentleman expresses his regrets and mentions that he will present himself. He rolls up his jacket cuff, revealing a gilded wristband. From it, a display illuminates, showcasing his information. However, what astonishes the ex-emperor is that the individual holds the 11th position. Shen Wu inquires whether they can converse. They proceed to the auburn-haired individual's chamber, where melodies are emanating to create an ambiance. Shen Wu requests that he take a seat, as he intends to present him with something truly exceptional. Soo-hyuk remains vigilant, with melodies accompanying the ambiance of a location. The auburn-haired individual softly sings along to the tune, yet the ex-emperor perceives him as tumultuous. Shen Wu gestures towards an unusual apparatus, requesting it to be warmed up. Then, it glows like coals. Shen Wu mentions that the temperature is dropping, prompting him to bring the device, since he is quite sensitive to the chill. This leads the former emperor to find it even more peculiar that he's utilizing a heater in October. At last, the beverage is prepared. The auburn-haired individual offers some to Soo-hyuk for him to sample. Shen Wu remarks that outsiders are enamored with it, and inquires whether the man isn't fond of it. However, Soo-hyuk insists that he does. With a touch of humility, the individual mentions that he prefers not to have his aides fetch his coffee, noting that they are already occupied with various tasks. Yet the ex-emperor desires to cut to the chase and inquires about the subject of the discussion. Shen Wu appreciates his demeanor. The auburn-haired individual inquires whether he has ever contemplated becoming a member of the Enlightened Collective. As usual, Soo-hyuk provides a candid response, denying his appeal. Shen Wu remarks that the dismissal was quite severe. He claims he never envisioned that an individual aspiring to be a hunter would not align perfectly with the organization. Anticipating the inquiries, Soo-hyuk states that he has no intention of joining any guild. Shen Wu then inquires whether he is a shaman, a question the former emperor anticipated, and Soo-hyuk clarifies that he has no plans of relocating. This revelation delights the redhead, who expresses his fondness for the magnificent country they inhabit as well. He additionally remarks that the individual is unexpectedly astute for someone who has merely emerged from a coma, and inquires about his objective. The individual additionally asserts that if he desires something, he merely needs to express it, for if it lies within his capabilities, he will bring it to fruition. Soo-hyuk exits the chamber, wishing he succeeded in obtaining a satisfactory response from him. Contemplating that leads him to recall Yuan and Chong Fook, pondering their well-being. He is taken aback by the communication. Both of his associates hold a rank of 3. Soo-hyuk beams, noticing that events are undoubtedly commencing for them as well. He dispatches a communication commending them for it. The ex-emperor is positioned nearby, fiddling with his device, yet he remains vigilant to all that is occurring. Thus, something readily captures his attention. There's something quite peculiar about him. An unusual illumination manifests in the atmosphere. Soo-hyuk hurries to investigate what it could be. Individuals are en route to pursue a similar path. They are unsettled by what they are witnessing. Suddenly, a gateway emerged in that location. A vehicle proclaims the events that transpired among the populace and urges all individuals to remain composed and proceed to the subterranean refuges at Shincheon Station. Soo-hyuk discerns that it is a level 5 portal. The security officer instructs everyone to relocate to a secure area. However, in the interim, over 10 individuals have already been drawn in. The individual advises them to remain composed, as the enlightened are present. Nevertheless, the others approach nearer. They debate on whether they ought to genuinely delay, concerned that the postponement will alarm the hunters regarding the individuals who were abducted. The ex-emperor inquires whether they will not be saved. The ensemble pivots and inquires about the identity of the unfamiliar individual, while also cautioning him to retreat as it poses a risk. In reply, Soo-hyuk displays his wristband. This leaves the group astonished by his revival, and the woman inquires about his status. The auburn-haired individual presents himself as Kim Yumin, a level 3 protector, and inquires of the ex-emperor whether he genuinely intends to enter the portal by himself. Soo-hyuk acknowledges that he is aware guardians can intervene during a crisis, to which the redhead concurs. Subsequently, the ex-emperor inquires whether this isn't one of those situations. However, Yumin expresses his confusion regarding why an enlightened individual would jeopardize their existence for such a cause, even if merely a handful of civilians were engulfed by the portal. With a sense of superiority, he claims they are the select few, and if individuals face the misfortune of being eradicated, then that is simply their destiny. Soo-hyuk inquires about how he could express such a thing. However, Yuman continues to assert that he merely stated the evidence. He asserts that they differ from ordinary citizens and deems Soo-hyuk utterly absurd for attempting to engage due to a misguided sense of righteousness. He also states that the ex-emperor is indifferent to his own existence. Soo-hyuk asserts that it isn't a matter of fairness. Irritated, he wonders how an individual can possess such influence, yet remain concealed like a turtle, and inquires whether he truly merits the designation of awakened. The ex-emperor further expresses that he ought to feel embarrassed about it, as the administration is not allocating billions merely for him to languish and remain inactive. He strolls by the auburn-haired individual who is captivated by his talent. Yuman shouts, inquiring whether he realizes it is unlawful for a hunter to access a portal unaccompanied, and warns of the possibility of notifying the association about the incident. However, Soo-hyuk simply responds that he is not a coward, and suggests that if he has time to grumble, he ought to return home and be a dutiful son to his parents. He steps into the gateway as Yuman continues to shout, inquiring what makes him feel so extraordinary. The auburn-haired individual concludes by expressing his desire to be devoured by a creature, as he wouldn't mind. Nevertheless, he understands that not everyone shares his perspective. Yuman informs Han Taman that if he enters as well, he will be obliterated. However, the individual simply retorts that he isn't a child weeping for his mother like him, because he refuses to remain idle like a coward while witnessing innocent lives being lost. The others share the same sentiment and enter the portal alongside him. This infuriates Yuman, prompting him to inquire if the fools are losing their minds. In an expansive woodland, an individual is perched upon the earth, perplexed about his location. Frightened, he claims he believes he's in serious predicament. Observing his surroundings with greater scrutiny, he becomes aware that it resembles the interior of the portal, prompting him to rise as he contemplates what actions he should take to avoid perishing in that place. He contemplates his spouse and his daughter, Mia Yoon, pondering the extent of his life insurance coverage. The gentleman stumbles upon a tendril and ultimately tumbles face down onto the earth. He endeavors to steady himself to rise. All of a sudden, something seizes his interest. Flesh-eating, plant-like creatures are poised to consume him. Utilizing the tendril, the being seizes the man's limb, drawing him closer to consume him. The creature ajar its enormous maw. Frantic, the individual yells that he cannot perish and pleads for assistance. His gaze succeeds in capturing the silhouette of an individual. There is a presence awaiting him. Furthermore, the individual comprehends that it is a conscious, urgent situation. He calls out for assistance once again. The creature, referred to as Adel, simply abandons its morsel to consume at a later time. Soo-hyuk observes that it stands approximately 2 meters in height, utilizing vine-like appendages that sway akin to arms. He believes that armed with a sword, his task would have been significantly simpler, since this is an unfavorable circumstance to be unarmed. The former emperor unleashes multiple assaults on the adversary, such as gusting blow, retreating initial blow, and penetrating power. Forming a substantial opening in the vegetation, Soo-hyuk is aware that this particular type of blossom requires gathering. Thus, he attempts a retreating wind strike, accumulating greater strength with a disappearing breeze, and subsequently he strikes the creature, ultimately reaping the wicked entity solely with his strikes. The individual is sprawled on the earth, dazed by the surge of revitalized power. He gazes at the former emperor. Soo-hyuk presents himself to the individual, assuring him that he is now secure. Still unsettled, the man expresses his gratitude for this reassurance. At last, the protectors succeed in locating him. Timon asserts that they have arrived to assist him. He inquires whether everyone is fine, and Soo-hyuk replies affirmatively. The swordsman is astonished that he successfully vanquished a large Adel by himself. Soo-hyuk mentions his intention to search for the remaining survivors and requests that they look after the man. Prior to his departure, they request him to pause. Timon replies that he lacks any apparatus. Thus he presents his blade in order to confront the Adels. The armament arrived at the opportune moment for the former ruler. With that, he dashes into the woods. Soo-hyuk is prepared to eliminate additional beasts. As he sprints, he perceives multiple entities in that direction. He is aware that approximately 20 individuals were engulfed by the portal. Nevertheless, Merely one was rescued. Nonetheless, regardless of the circumstances, the individual who brought together the entire expanse of Huan will rescue all and seal the gateway. A hunter's primary goal is to obliterate the cosmo energy, which resembles the core that sustains the universe and seals the gateway. It manifests in various shapes. Moreover, it may serve as an ultimate adversary, and vanquishing it thoughtlessly could lead to the obliteration of the entire realm, resulting in the demise of the remaining inhabitants. Consequently, they must save them prior to an encounter with the cosmo energy. Fortunately, the opportunity has not yet passed. It has been quite some time since Suhook wielded a blade, and this is an opportune moment. He unleashes his new armament. Perceiving his presence, the tentacles advance towards him. Suhook executes multiple strikes with his blade. Fragments disperse through the atmosphere as he continues to advance. And he also attained the harmony of blade and physique. Utilizing the armament, the effectiveness of chi dissemination surged by 50%, while slicing capability enhanced by 30%. It nearly reached the proficiency of a first-rate swordsman from the arcane continent. Suhook reunites with the assembly, delivering additional survivors. He proclaims his intention to search for additional options and requests the Guardians to remain in that location. Anxious, Tianmin inquires whether he will manage everything by himself. Suhook replies that, fortunately, the world isn't that vast, and reiterates that he will guide the survivors to that location. Nevertheless, the Overseer indicates that possessing merely a single rendezvous location could prove to be problematic, proposing they part ways, select distinct locations, and subsequently maintain communication. Tianmin demonstrates to the former emperor how to accomplish that with the bracelet. He claims he will dispatch the whereabouts of the final surviving individuals via an authorized messenger, which simplifies matters for Suhook, who was previously unaware that the bracelet possessed such a multitude of beneficial features. Tianmin expresses his regret for not being able to assist significantly. As Guardians are not particularly equipped for frontline skirmishes, the former emperor indicates that their worry alone is already quite sufficient. Suhook strolls through the woodland, utilizing the blade to forge a way forward. With the assistance of the protectors, the recovery operations proceeded smoothly. He discovers additional survivors and presents himself to them. Via the messenger, Tianmin conveys that the 22 individuals were saved, which is beneficial for the former emperor, who can now concentrate solely on combat. All that remains is to obliterate the cosmic energy of this realm. The colossal appendages undulate, prepared to assault. Standing at 3 meters in height, Suhook is convinced that Atel is the ultimate adversary. Thus, he intends to eliminate the beast swiftly. The ex-emperor launches the initial assault, yet nothing occurs. In addition to being enormous, the appendages are exceptionally powerful as well. He evades Atel's strike. Suhook understands that a standard sword technique is ineffective. After all, a superior adversary truly operates on an entirely different plane. There exists a technique he disapproves of, yet it has been quite some time. Thus, he believes it is acceptable to utilize it. Suhook is directing power into the blade, a method more formidable than advanced combat disciplines. At the expense of the wielder's determination, the essence-harvesting infernal blade. If he can master it, that overwhelming strength will belong solely to him. However, he must endure the malevolence it harbors. This is the sole method to conquer that entity. Empowered by the ominous energy, he unleashes his force upon the creature. His sole adversary is the colossal Atel. Suhook employs the soul-harvesting demonic blade's ultimate technique, unleashing a spirit-draining strike. The creature confronts all that energy directly. This assault appears to be effective against the being. Consequently, once more, the ex-emperor ascends. Due to his psychological resilience, he withstood the cognitive degradation. In the interface display, it indicates that he acquired the ability, enhanced resistance to psychological decay. His intellect was cleared, and his mastery of the soul-harvesting demonic sword technique advanced, earning him the moniker of Lesser Annihilator. This revelation was exceedingly astonishing for the erstwhile emperor. The sentinels stand by the entrance. They are concerned because Suhook is taking more time than they anticipated. At last, someone is on the verge of revealing themselves. It's Suhook, secure, and unharmed. Taman and the others rush toward the ex-emperor. He claims they were genuinely concerned. Suhuk expresses that he is well and appreciates him for the blade. He claims it's an exceptionally crafted armament. Grinning Taman expresses that he invested his whole wealth to have the dwarves create it, and he is pleased that Suhuk appreciated it. Suhuk is on the verge of departing when he receives a summons. Hunter Kim Inkyu, ranked 7th and head of the KR Guild, summons him to annihilate the portal. The proposal takes the ex-emperor by surprise. Abruptly, a member of the guild captures the president's focus. Directing their gaze toward where the individual indicates, they become aware of the gateway. Vanished. They are astonished. Xiao Baiyuk succeeded in securing a rank 5 position entirely on his own. 2. It's astonishing. As though a creature emerged. Xiao Baiyuk strides by them as if he were an exceptionally formidable entity, which infuriates Yuman when he comes to understand that he is being regarded as a hero. Irritated, the auburn-haired individual states that, regardless of performing admirably, he must still face consequences for violating the law. Taman inquires about what Suhuk allegedly disregarded, to which Yuman responds that he entered the portal by himself. The swordsman contends that this is a flawed reasoning aimed at undermining Suhuk, and points out that, in reality, he didn't enter alone. Nevertheless, Yuman counters, asserting that the scoundrel never meant to adhere to the rules, and they merely found themselves ensnared by circumstance. Fed up, Taman declares there's no justification for conversing with him. Subsequently, the red-haired individual begins to create a commotion, alleging that the ex-emperor attempted to access the portal solo and disregarded their cautions, dismissing the organization as if it were a mere farce. The onlookers speculate about the issue between the pair, wishing that, at the very least, Yuman would express some appreciation. Soon, the crowd begins to voice their opinions, curious about the identity of the individual causing such a commotion, and questioning if he is affiliated with the organization to behave in such a manner. This only serves to heighten the Guardian's annoyance. He claims it is time to reveal the consequences for unauthorized awakened. The man then seizes Suhuk by the collar. Yuman menaces the offender, yet the ex-sovereign remains composed, as if the irritation is trivial. Annoyed, Yuman inquires if he intends to strike him, as he would incorporate that into the allegations, emphasizing his commitment to escorting him to jail personally. The previous monarch's response is a blow to his gut that surprises the aggressor unexpectedly. Yuman collapses to the earth, moaning in agony. Before Suhuk could take any action, another person intervened in front of him. Inkyu states he ought to express gratitude to the individual who rescued everyone at the entrance, inquiring about his perspective on what an awakened event entails. However, his discourse only infuriates Yuman further, prompting him to inquire about his identity. The individual reintroduces himself as the leader of the KR Guild. Yuman bows his head before the authoritative figure, and all eyes turn to someone of even greater stature. Shamu discloses that he perceived all that transpired from his location. He presents himself as the vice president of the Enlightened Coalition. Initially, he expresses regret for not addressing the matter promptly, and assures that he will ensure such an occurrence does not transpire again. Shamu indicates that if anyone is feeling unwell, they may access any university medical center within the affiliated network, as all costs will be borne by them. An elderly woman expresses that without the enlightened individual, they would be facing dire circumstances, and pleads for his mercy. Tearfully, the initial individual saved proclaims that if it weren't for the Redeemer, he would never reunite with his loved ones. He too implores that the former emperor be spared from retribution. Shamu asserts that they needn't be concerned about that, as it is unlikely to occur. He subsequently requests Suhuk to verify the license. He promptly activates it by tapping his wristband. The display indicates the condition of a solitary player, a permit that grants him access to the gateways independently. This astonishes the former emperor, who believes it to be the demand he submitted previously. Shamu graciously clarifies that he has authorization to enter by himself, and furthermore, he saved individuals. Thus he merits a heroic accolade. The gentleman requests that all present offer young Suhuk a round of commendation. Due to the efforts of the vice president, the portal issue was addressed. Kim Yu Ming received a 3-month revocation of his license and was assigned to 6 months of active duty as a consequence. Suhuk's hunting rank ascended to 8, and he was awarded 20 million won as a prize. Shamu indicates that the organization's finances are constrained. Thus, that is the maximum they can provide. Suhook responds that it's acceptable. He merely desires one request, that his name remains undisclosed in association with the event. The vice president asserts that it's not a difficult demand, and he will ensure it is fulfilled. Suhook has at long last returned home. The individual is reclining as he takes a break. He gazes upon the gemstone valued at 80 million, and he possesses 2 of them. It was Taemin who collected them and transferred them, as the champion was occupied with rescuing individuals. It's a significant unforeseen advantage. Ultimately, his valiant deed generated 180 million won, resulting in 160 million remaining after taxation, but culminating in a total of 200 million when combined with his bank account. He generated that considerable amount of income in merely 1 day, and aspires to accumulate an additional 300 to secure a modest loan and purchase an apartment. Attaining homeownership has been his family's aspiration for many years. In the status panel, it indicates that he is at level 18, along with an increase in several other levels, and there is new information available. He facilitates the streamlined addition, gaining a clearer perspective on matters. Suhook recalls the designation Minor Annihilator, and seeks to comprehend its capabilities. With it, his statistics rise by 5% when navigating a realm independently. Upon tapping the display, Suhook becomes inundated with numerous screens. Numerous methods exist that can assist with infernal practices and enchantment-related endeavors. In Wonder, deception and mystical practices pose the greatest challenge, yet he possessed ample fortitude, rendering it a minor issue. On our planet, attaining such a level of immunity necessitates the synchronization phase, yet he accessed it merely as a skill enhancement. If he attains equilibrium and fortifies his psychological defenses further, rendering him entirely invulnerable to deceptive tactics. Abruptly, his sister enters the chamber, inquiring what Oppa is up to. Suhook remarks that it's been some time since he last engaged in self-conversation, and the individual replies that it's insignificant, asserting that she is being excessively wary. The observer reports that she will slice some fruit for consumption. From the information she discovers regarding the portal occurrence close to Sinchon Station, Suhook brings it to her sibling's attention, and he feigns astonishment. At the very least, he is confident that the vice president fulfilled his part of the agreement. Something piques Suhook's interest. His wristband is emitting a peculiar signal, prompting him to swiftly conceal it. Suhook intends to confide in his sister, but he's biding his time until she is solitary, as he wishes to obscure the incident involving the portal. He lacks sufficient time to contemplate as his sister seizes his arm. Suhook discloses that she had previously suspected it, but now she possesses confirmation that he is an enlightened being. The young woman becomes slightly irate, reminding him that it hasn't been too long since his hospitalization. Suhook responds that he recalls vividly, and that was precisely why he was admitted. Suhook also states the bracelet signifies he is positioned 6th or above, alleging that he has been revived for some time. To exacerbate the situation, the former emperor claims he may attain gold shortly, as he's exceptionally gifted. His younger sibling inquires whether he believes he can escape from it merely by using verbal expressions. The reports return to the portal occurrence, indicating that an emerging talent among Korea's awakened individuals significantly contributed to its containment. But the organization refrained from disclosing his identity, although they mentioned he might pursue a path similar to Baekmuhuk as the forthcoming Universal 8. Cautious, Suhook inquires whether that pertains to him, and the individual verifies it. She questions his position, receiving the response via the news that he holds Class 8. The deputy chief asserts that it's not solely concerning his abilities, but that he is resilient and possesses a sense of fairness. All Suhook can concentrate on is the position. One of the individuals who was saved during an interview expressed that his sole focus was on survival while contemplating his family until the hero arrived. The individual claims he ceased to have faith in such matters when he turned 12, yet now he is convinced of its authenticity. He emphasizes that heroes are real. However, nonetheless, Suhook maintains that he is not particularly remarkable, asserting that he merely acted as any other awakened individual would. Since that day, the world has not ceased discussing the events that transpired, as well as the renewed belief in humanity and the resilience of Korea. In the media, they persistently discuss the celestial tier awakened individuals who disrupted everything. The individual explains his decision to conceal his identity, and all acknowledged that choice. Over the phone, Shinwoo encourages him to relish the moment, as he has accomplished something extraordinary, disclosing that he is a devoted admirer of the anonymous champion. He He goes so far as to mention that if he weren't serving as vice president, he would have founded a fan club, prompting the hero to inquire whether he is refraining from leaving clandestine remarks. Shinwoo merely responds that he is an enigmatic individual. Following that, unveiling the reality, he forged a provisional partnership with his sibling, establishing the primary principle of deceiving their guardians. Ultimately, if they discover that one among them could collapse. The second guideline is to reach the goal at the quickest pace, and for that he must secure a rank 9, which represents the elite, and attain a security clearance. The third guideline is to avoid excess. After all, even Sahuk understands that there is no turning back, so he consents to adhere to the guidelines. At the very least, it's a significant hurdle surmounted. The protagonist opts to visit a corner shop, his. The belief is that if this continues, his true identity will ultimately be revealed. At this moment, he must conceal it. It's humiliating for Sahuk, yet it's preferable to being discovered. Numerous uncertainties remained regarding the protagonist, with some even questioning whether it's a tale fabricated by the organization. He is accustomed to such occurrences on the Huan continent. Renown and gossip consistently trailed him. Sahuk obliterates yet another gateway. During the previous month, he accomplished approximately 20 on his own. The creature's ichor trickles down his hand. Fortunately, not everything he undertakes is being documented. Yet he is aware that a cloaked silhouette perpetually traversing portals would not remain inconspicuous. Individuals instinctively began to focus on his accomplishments. All gazes were captivated by the peculiar, unnamed individual back at the Baekdusan Guild. Within the office of President Ye-hook-yong, all this nonsense is causing him a migraine. He ceases reading and requests the other individual to refrain from drumming his fingers. However, the man with long hair replies that it's merely anticipated, since he struggles to remain still. Observing that leads Sahuk to question whether the individual truly ought to be at the helm of the largest guild in the nation. Subsequently, he remarks that if the individual is that eager, he ought to visit him. This excites Yang regarding the prospect. He claims it's preferable to loitering, and is convinced that if he is straightforward with the unidentified individual, he won't overlook him. Abruptly, his foot becomes immobilized on the ground, surprising Yang, who expresses his discontent. Sayul clarifies that he ought not to dash away like a lunatic. He clarifies that they dispatched numerous messages and calls, and if there is no response, it is due to the masked individual having no desire to appear. Yang inquires whether they plan to remain idle while the individual escapes, questioning the duration they will permit ManhwaCapped to control them. He also expresses concern that the other factions will pursue him, and Sayul has a suspicion that the unidentified figure is Sahuk. The man wearing spectacles claims that, regardless of whether it's not the child, he possesses potential akin to the unrecognized individual, and the man with lengthy hair insists that he reveal the strategy. Sayul states that, throughout the training sessions, Sahuk consistently preferred not to engage socially, disregarding communications and inquiries from the guilds, realizing that at this pace the former emperor will not enter into agreements with anyone, and that exerting pressure on him is quite an unprofessional tactic. The gentleman asserts that there exists solely one remedy, which is Shahar Kal Iluriat, surprising Yang unexpectedly. Sayul claims she was Sahuk's mentor, and although the elf refutes this, he is aware that they possess a certain connection. The man with lengthy hair asserts that it is impossible to persuade her, particularly given that she isn't even a human being. Sayul claims it's not that. Rather, the child wasn't her sole pupil. As a result, he possesses their communication records, regardless of his awareness of the depth of their connection. They have maintained correspondence. Upon reviewing the roster, Yang notices the name Ayan, who has contemplated the guild's proposition. Sayul mentions that apart from his relatives, the young woman is the sole individual near to him, and inquires whether it's worthwhile to deepen their connection. The lengthy-haired individual poses the same question. Thus, Four Eyes concludes that she ought to formalize an agreement with the Baekdusan Guild, as her presence significantly enhances their prospects. Yang inquires whether, subsequent to that, they will establish a direct communication channel with the enigmatic figure, to which the other consents, interpreting it as a compliment that he's a repugnant, conniving scoundrel. Sayul inquires whether he found that unappealing. With a menacing, malevolent smile, Yang urges them to proceed without delay. In yet another avenue, Sahuk is poised to generate additional income. Without a moment's hesitation, he begins eliminating the creatures. His adversary is a colossal mantis, possessing an assault that halts the passage of time. A significant obstacle for the masked champion, he unleashes a metal-smashing strike. The ultimate maneuver, a singularly focused, obliterating void, triggers a massive detonation in the confined space, and vanquishing the colossal mantis. Suhook gazes upon the devastation he has inflicted, every ounce of effort assured an advancement, and perfecting the rank A ability, Iron Smashing Palm. The former emperor is still far from finished. He must become even more powerful. Thus he maintains his tidying efforts, employing a specialized apparatus to obtain the residual products. Fortunately, he acquires a mana crystal. The majority of the mantis's physique is ineffective, yet he can still utilize the forelegs, which hold significance. Since artisans have a strong preference for those materials, a single pair can be priced at 10 million won. Suhook estimates that marketing that alongside the monostone will yield him a minimum of 50 million won. Abruptly, something seizes the attention of the masked individual. An unusual rock manifests in his way. It embodies the celestial force of this realm, emitting animosity. And he understands that if he disregards it, it will result in numerous fatalities. Fortunately, Suhook is present to prevent that from occurring. He hurls his blade towards the celestial force. The lance makes contact with the rock, resulting in a fissure at the point of impact. Subsequently, it continues to fracture further as it releases its vitality. With all his treasures secured in the satchel, the cloaked individual mounts an all-terrain vehicle, igniting the engine with urgency, prepared to escape this realm as swiftly as possible. Suhook is operating at maximum velocity. In the far-off horizon, he perceives the glow of the egress. The champion ventures forth through the gateway, transporting all his belongings. The individuals awaiting his arrival outside are already aware that the entire area has been emptied, as usual. After all, that's what one anticipates from the anonymous champion. The all-terrain vehicle he acquired recently augmented his profits. Furthermore, it is essential to possess the appropriate equipment for solitary hunting. Additionally, as the product was crafted by dwarves, it boasts remarkable durability and features a storage enhancement enchantment. For Suhook, it was advantageous as it was more economical, rendering it a sound investment at a cost of 800 million won. Thus, the protagonist perseveres, having accomplished. It's a lot of money. Suhook says he is outside the structure. He says he has got some mantis legs and mana stones, and that a team will be sent to process them. During the call, the former emperor asks if there are any portals of rank 6 or 7 available, but he is told that these are the property of the guilds. He asks for something less difficult, but the person on the phone suggests he take a break because he has been working hard. Suhook says he'll think about it, and then gets an invitation to join for coffee, which he says no to, and puts off for another time. The person then tells him that they will take care of the goods and give him an update soon. It is a shame that portals are inaccessible right now. He has to reach rank 9 to finally tell his parents. He looks at his phone and sees a message. Suhook 1 asks him to let her know how he is feeling after lunch and says that if he is hurt, he should come back straight away. He informs his sibling about the entire predicament. Suhook discovers he also possesses communications from Ione. They're urgent messages from the girl expressing her intention to join the Bakedusan Guild. The former hero praises her and requests that she keeps him updated about the festivities. With everything settled, it's time for the midday meal. He enters an eatery. It's still too soon for midday meals, so the establishment is vacant, but at least he can dine undisturbed. He overhears someone mention that the anonymous champion visited the organization. The other staff member remarks that the masked individual even submitted mantis limbs and mana stones, grumbling that the unidentified figure has only recently become an awakened, yet continues to receive preferential treatment. However, his companion advocates for the protagonist, asserting that it's justified, and that it's valuable to retain an individual like that, mentioning that in a different nation, the press could utterly dismantle him. With no alternative, the man concedes that he is correct. Ultimately, the masked individual possesses promise akin to Bak Mahak, and his loss would be catastrophic. What captures Suhook's interest in the dialogue is when they discuss the Tranen dimension, an extensive, restricted area where nothing has been discovered. Even the previous monarch understands that it is unfeasible for an individual to accomplish it independently. They remark on how remarkably peculiar this hush regarding the circumstances is. The duo also discusses the collaboration with Elvenheim, and even mentions the attractive instructor who made an appearance. Subsequently, the other individual alludes to the speculation that Elvenheim has created an innovative magical artifact capable of compressing the spatial realm to the dimensions of an island. Suhuk is no longer present at the table. The man is settling his account when he overhears that the organization will shortly issue a recruitment notice for hunters. This piques Suhuk's interest. With no current openings, there's limited work, and he realizes he couldn't tackle the Tranin dimension by himself. Recalling what that staff member mentioned, he recognizes it's an ideal opportunity. He must act swiftly, so he contacts the vice president. However, it seems that the individual is quite occupied. Suhuk contemplates his next move, as he must act more swiftly than the guilds. Abruptly, an individual appears, remarking on his considerable arrogance, and asserts that with his skills and strength at such a young age, he is entirely justified in his attitude. The individual addresses him by his name, indicating his awareness of his identity. Enhance it further. The one-eyed individual refers to him as Nameless. The gentleman claims he appears to have little fondness for trivial conversation. Thus, he will proceed directly to the matter at hand. Initially, he inquires whether the child understands the reason for his presence, but Suhuk is completely unaware. The man with a single eye presents himself as Park Mugi. Suhuk responds that the individual lacks skill as well, questioning his intentions and asserting that power isn't the sole factor in this life. With a grin, Mugi inquires if that is his intended approach to the game. Illuminated by a radiance, he proclaims that he must demonstrate what genuine power entails. He conjures an energy dragon and unleashes his assault upon Suhuk. The ex-emperor observes intently. He successfully evades being engulfed. Suhuk perceives that the elderly man's skill is a shadow-oriented Esper capability, and it possesses remarkable speed. The entity relentlessly pursues him, compelling him to exceed his boundaries. This will not be a simple battle for the champion. Mugi asserts he evaded skillfully, yet that does not imply it will be beneficial, for the youngster is merely a cunning fish that undermines Suhuk's honor. He believes that in the presence of Huan, he would never have had the chance to even brush against his sleeve. On this occasion, he intends to engage earnestly. The previous sovereign opts for a frontal assault, its numerous energy dragons poised to consume him. He evades every solitary being, excessively swift to match his actions. Employing that strategy to confront the adversary directly, the child is more remarkable than the elderly man anticipated. At the very least, the confrontation has become increasingly engaging. Mugi initiates a fresh assault, yet this presents an opportunity for Suhuk, while the one-eyed individual is preoccupied with his duplicate. The individual endeavors to interpret his actions, yet no designation is swifter. Suhuk realizes that although it may be a psychic talent, ultimately it remains merely flames, and that it can be extinguished by depleting the surrounding atmosphere. Thus he employs Wind Slash and Retreating Wind Strike, battling against all the blazes surrounding him, irritating the one-eyed individual due to his remarkable abilities, despite the fact that merely 2 months have passed since he was awakened. Suhuk ultimately halts directly before him. Vitality is coursing through his entire being. His subsequent action is the clandestine method of Shaolin. Discharging the 100-step celestial punch, Mugi endeavors to shield himself from the forceful explosion. His flames are not as large as they once were. Thus, they are swiftly extinguished by the assault. Subsequently, he unveils his gaze. Suhuk is employing the tactile sensation against him. The ex-emperor clarifies that at that precise location lies the pressure point, and striking it will instantly result in his demise. Mugi seeks to comprehend the nature of this method, ultimately recognizing it as a bodily augmentation. Suhuk claims he is uncertain as to why the elderly gentleman sought him out, yet he wishes they do not cross paths again, as he does not maintain a favorable rapport with the guild. He further cautions that if their paths intertwine once more, he will bring an end to him. Mugi inquires whether he is aware that Universal 8 has placed him on their list of objectives, and if the young one believes they are benevolent. Pleading, the elderly man implores him to ally with Mugi, for regardless of his strength, he will be unable to manage it independently. The absence of a response from No Name frustrates him. At last, in a deserted passageway, his crimson fluid spills onto the earth. Suhuk experiences a sensation as if his innards are being contorted. He believes he may have exerted himself excessively. Now more than ever, he must accelerate his intentions. It appears that he recently battled one of the sole rank 12 awoken individuals in Korea, and he is aware that if he had confronted him directly, he would have been defeated. However, he harbors no remorse, for at the very least, he confronted that insolent scoundrel. What? He is concerned about the Universal 8, who, in contrast to Mugi, will not be simple to manage. Thus, he must become more powerful to confront them. Within the confines of the global airport zone, a silhouette paves the path, accompanied by individuals who appear to be his bodyguards. The gentleman possesses an appealing grin. Similar to a celebrity, Andrei Vladimir is welcomed by his valet. He responds to Chaemin, who informs him that the vehicle is awaiting his arrival. Onlookers gaze and speculate that he could potentially be an actor, as he appears somewhat recognizable. Chaemin expresses that, had he reached out to them sooner, they might have circumvented all this upheaval. However, Vladimir claims he also did not anticipate needing to relocate swiftly. Yet the elderly gentleman asserts that, nonetheless, a prior notice before departing would have been beneficial. Journey takes place in a compact luxury vehicle. Vladimir inquires about the origin of the name. His steward mentions that it has merely been several months since he was in a state of unconsciousness, and the strange aspect is how he regained strength so rapidly. The fair-haired woman inquires about his age, and receives the response that the enigmatic champion is 27 years of age. Vladimir discloses that the veiled individual is the motive for his arrival. This will be quite fascinating for him. He inquires about the anticipated release date of Bayok. Chaemin responds that they have heard he could be set free next week, and requests that they exercise a bit of patience. Vladimir expresses his dissatisfaction, remarking that no individual will remain anonymous for another year, and laments that the training-obsessed maniac has not altered one bit. The chauffeur appears somewhat discomforted by the blonde's company. Andrei Vladimir, the Sanguine Sovereign, alternatively referred to as the Monarch of the Darkness, a Russian champion. Given his affiliation with the notorious Universal 8, it's hardly shocking that he exhibits such hubris. The fair-haired individual perceives that something is amiss. He inquires of the chauffeur whether he dislikes listening to his superior being demeaned. Chaemin attempts to mediate, asserting that he is merely a youth. Andrei inquires whether he uttered anything inappropriate, as the scoundrel isolated himself to practice, necessitating his presence. Once more, his focus shifts to the lad, and he inquires whether he doesn't. Similar to him. Yet the chauffeur insists otherwise. The fair-haired woman leans closer and advises him to unwind and wear a grin. Chaemin assures that he will clarify to the driver what his role is. Andrei claims he has been acquainted with Bayok Mushov since he was merely a young rascal, and he mocks him, inquiring whether his canine believes it can respond to him in such a manner. The chauffeur requests him not to disrespect his employer. A mischievous grin emerges on the blonde's visage. Andrei, exuding a malevolent presence, inquires whether the scoundrel truly uttered those words to him. The motorist becomes exceedingly frightened. It's as if he's on the verge of being consumed by beasts. He can't even shift his position. If this persists, the man realizes it will spell his doom. Therefore, the operator pleads for compassion. Then all that atmosphere vanishes. Chaemin inquires if the individual is all right. The motorist quakes in terror, momentarily believing he was on the verge of entering the afterlife. However, the elderly gentleman senses that something is amiss with the individual, prompting him to request a brief pause. And the blonde remarks that the chauffeur has a dreadful expression on his countenance. Andrei advises him to unwind, as existence is too fleeting to traverse it in a state of gloom. It's another dawn. The internal wounds from the altercation with Park Mugi remain unhealed. If Suhuk attempts to act carelessly, the agony will begin to disseminate like venom, preventing him from entering portals at the moment. He must prioritize his recovery first. The entrance is unlatched by his mother. She finds it peculiar that he jogs daily, yet this time remained at home. Furthermore, she mentions that she has the day free. Then his father arrives and proposes they embark on a small excursion together for the first time in quite a while. Suhuk appears, expressing agreement with the suggestion. At last, Suhuk inquires whether everyone has departed, and all three of them concur simultaneously. The former emperor, however, finds himself devoid of words. Ultimately, he remarks that they orchestrated this without his involvement, and it would have been considerate had they informed him in advance. His father retorts that it's not as if an idle individual like him has any obligations. Without disclosing any specifics, Suhuk asserts that Even those without employment have their own matters to attend to. In that instant, the man expresses that occasionally his son returns home exceedingly late, despite asserting it's merely training, arousing his suspicion that something is amiss. Yet his mother comes to his defense, stating that children aren't obligated to share every detail, and they also deserve a measure of privacy. Suhook feels uncomfortable when the lady claims she comprehended everything. Father expresses a slight concern, while mother remarks that remaining confined at home consistently isn't beneficial either. Regardless, the elder gentleman asserts that they will still visit Han River Park, perhaps watch a film or dine out. That lifts the spirits of the youngest member of the family, as they haven't engaged in such an activity in quite a while. Suhook further mentions that their mother won't need to prepare any meals, prompting the woman to inquire about the reason. The former emperor attempts to clarify that she won't have to undertake any tasks whatsoever. Suhook reminds them to pack lunch containers for the park, regardless of whether they ultimately dine out for dinner. The girl's gaze brightens as she makes the plea to her father, and Suhook recalls that when it pertains to culinary skills, the man's cuisine is significantly superior. He feigns astonishment at the demand. Father is prepared to showcase his culinary prowess. He proclaims that all should view television in the lounge while he prepares the meal. His hands are adept, even as he slices some onions. The subsequent phase involves adding a pinch of salt. Entertained? In the moment, Suhook inquires about where her father acquired such confidence, to which her mother chuckles, remarking that he is genuinely feeling motivated. Ultimately, the omelet rice is prepared for the morning meal. Suhook and his mother's eyes shimmer with delight at the meal. Father extends his dish to Suhook. Observing his serving, the former emperor perceives it as somewhat excessive. The elderly gentleman asserts that his son has been diligently practicing late into the evening, thus he requires adequate nourishment. Mother states that his lack of employment is inconsequential. His well-being alone brings her joy. They commend the meal once more, and Father notes it's unusual for his son to be so subdued, remarking that the food is delicious. It has been ages since Suhook experienced this level of comfort, hoping that each day could be like this one. The tiny dwelling isn't unpleasant, yet he remains unable to cease contemplating it. He contemplates whether this is the opportune moment to reveal his secret to them. Anxious, his father inquires if anything is amiss, noting that he has scarcely eaten his meal. Suhook places his spoon onto the surface of the table. With his gaze cast downward, he expresses that he must share. Before he has the opportunity to speak, Suhook contacts him. The young woman indicates that this is not the moment to reveal the truth. Suhook believes that if he divulges this information, they may perceive it as though they have lost the son who has just emerged from a coma. His financial account contains approximately 500 million won. If he secures a modest loan, he might likely obtain a 30 square meter apartment. However, Universal 8 is advancing, thus he requires sufficient energy to confront them. To achieve that, he needs additional funds. The climate is pleasant for the excursion. Suhook observes that the vehicle is trembling significantly and concludes that it's due to its considerable age, prompting him to consider purchasing a new one. Astonished, Suhook gazes at the roused father. A large banner adorns the structure, and the young woman remarks that being among those extraordinary individuals does not appear to be so undesirable. She states that the count of removals has decreased, and the audience adores them as if they were famous figures. Suhook asserts that if that were true, the family wouldn't endure such hardship. Yet the mother insists she doesn't wish for her daughter's hand to be tainted with crimson fluid. She asserts that certain matters hold greater significance than wealth. The young woman quips, inquiring whether that might mean having an attractive daughter, and thus they continue their journey. The family enjoys a handful of infrequent, tranquil moments in each other's company, and Suhook struggles to recall the last occasion he experienced a day akin to this. He delights in the delectable treats Father prepared. Suhook has already squandered considerable time with them during his stay in Huan, so he aims to enhance their joy even further. He wishes to employ his talents to accomplish everything possible for his family. Mother is astonished and inquires whether all of this isn't overly costly. The former emperor replies that since his sister arranged the film, he will cover the cost of the dinner. She inquires what type of jobless individual could possess funds like that. Suhook assures that he is all right and intends to resume working shortly. Father inquires if he is certain of that, considering he has just risen. With a grin, Suhook reassures him not to fret, as he is sufficiently recuperated and rested. Mother expresses her gratitude for his diligent efforts and requests that he informs them if he encounters any challenges. A new day is drawing to a close. Wearing a concerned expression, Father inquires why his son exhaled deeply, and Suhuk clarifies that it's due to the day seeming to pass much too swiftly. Suhuk inquires of the gentleman if he shares that sentiment as well. The mother quips that he is becoming like his father, which concerns her as she prefers not to have another overly sensitive individual. Abruptly, they notice that Suhuk is taking longer than expected, and the woman mentions she has gone to the restroom. Suhuk volunteers to see if everything is all right. The man strolls about, searching everywhere for his sister. Elsewhere, the young woman is being struck. The individual responsible claims that a location such as this is unfit for a destitute person like her. Suhuk murmurs that she's a failure. The young woman eventually overhears it and remarks that someone is keen to meet their demise. She darts towards Suhuk, inquiring whether she believes she is exceptional. Before another strike could connect, the girl's hand is seized. This takes her by surprise. Suhuk possesses an expression that suggests he could overpower anyone. He remarks that it appears to be a form of camouflage method. Irritated, the girl inquires who he is to interfere in this matter. Thus, Suhuk identifies himself as the sibling of Suhuk. His sister remarks that she is well. She advises him to refrain from becoming entangled. Yet he inquires how he is meant to refrain from intervening when his sister was on the verge of being struck. Abruptly, he glances at her as he perceives something. The former emperor is aware that his sister has previously been struck. Suhuk inquires about the type of half-hearted discount disguise she's donning, resembling a creature. A chilling atmosphere envelops him, and the young woman senses it and becomes frightened. At that moment, she yells, labeling him a deviant and demanding that he release her. Han Aaron opens her eyes and discovers that nothing is restraining her. Suhuk off chuckles and inquires if she's out of her mind, which irritates the other girl, who retorts by asking if she's toying with her. Suhuk desires the specifics at a later time, but for the moment, he instructs Han Aaron to halt before the situation escalates. However, that only intensifies her fury. The young woman inquires what a vagrant like him intends to accomplish. The former emperor claims that poverty is not an offense, yet Han Aaron argues otherwise, asserting that the affluent remain unscathed while the destitute face repercussions. This is the way the nation operates. She inquires whether being raised in such a manner rendered him oblivious, and remarks that the girl is unable to respond when she is struck. The young woman claims that her household can manage to afford their cramped, dilapidated flat, and proposes that he kneel and implore for absolution. Suhuk inquires if that is all he needs to accomplish. Suhuk attempts to persuade him to simply move on. Observing Han Aaron, he is certain she possesses wealth and influence. He claims that she merely appears to be an uncertain, spoiled child, attempting to conceal her feelings of inadequacy. Furthermore, he suggests that, when adorned in lavish attire, she actually conveys an even greater sense of poverty. He asserts that the issue must lie with the individual, not the attire. His remarks infuriate Han Aaron, prompting her to attempt to strike him with her handbag. Yet he snatches it effortlessly. The affluent young woman insists that he return it. She inquires whether he comprehends the value of her handbag, menacing him with dire consequences if it sustains even a blemish. To provoke her, Suhuk remarks that if she treasures it so dearly, she ought to have reconsidered before brandishing it about, to which she retorts that he wouldn't be able to purchase it even after a month of labor. The former emperor observes that she resembles a vagrant, yet continues to label others as such. Suhuk thoroughly tears her bag to shreds. The girl's belongings tumble to the ground. It's as though her spirit has departed from her form, and Han Aaron inquires whether she is merely envisioning it. With a content grin, he declares it's the truth. Han Aaron becomes frantic upon witnessing the remnants of her bag. The young woman cannot fathom that scoundrel truly went through with that. She then gestures towards Suhuk. Then she instructs her companions to devastate him. However, he is a former emperor, and he effortlessly evades a wealthy young woman. Suhuk gathers his sibling, thus she avoids being hit with a bag. He effortlessly retreats from them. Observing that minor altercation, Han Aaron suspects the individual is an enlightened one. Suhuk grabs her mobile device. He will verify whether it was recorded accurately. On the display, a cluster of girls is seen giggling at the siblings. A dark sphere is hurtling directly towards him. The former emperor perceives it immediately. With a single hand, he halts the item, and it plummets directly to the earth. Grinning, he inquires whether she had a protector concealed nearby, but it's unfortunate as her phone rests in his grasp. Suhook remarks that she must belong to an affluent lineage, and menaces, inquiring about the potential consequences if the footage were to be released. He advises her to interpret it as a cautionary message not to interfere with his sister once more, and that she ought to feel fortunate that only the bag was ultimately damaged. Prior to his departure, the former emperor articulates that, should he desire to, he could eliminate them all in that very moment. This terrifies the cruel girls. Removed from the turmoil, the siblings are seated. Suhook expresses that she was reluctant to reveal that aspect of herself. She mentions they shared the same class throughout all 3 years of secondary school, yet never managed to get along. As Han exhibits an air of superiority, the situation deteriorated further in the second year, coinciding with her father's business thriving. Suhook seeks to understand better, while her sister merely remarks that it must have been dreadful for the other girl. Beaming, Suhook mentions that she has an older sibling as well, a striking, enlightened individual, and he excels academically. She inquires why he responded in such a manner, given that he complimented her beauty upon her awakening, and the former emperor explains that it was an intensely emotional instance. Regardless, the girl has lost interest, as it merely reveals Han's feelings of inadequacy, stemming from her resentment towards Suhook's superior looks. However, Suhook discloses that there may be an additional explanation as well, which piques her brother's interest. She states that, towards the conclusion of the second year, the individual Han was fond of turned her down, and instead admitted his feelings to Suhook. That causes Suhook to recoil, coming to the understanding that there was a minor romantic entanglement. Suhook Flinch asserts that she clearly declined to accompany him, as she lacked the capacity for a relationship, due to her brother's condition and her mother's illness. Consequently, she mocked Han as a form of retribution. The former emperor claims he ought to have yanked her hair out instead of damaging the bag, but his sister insists that was already sufficient. She chuckles, informing her oppa that he was remarkable. Suhook's flinch prompts him to view it as a minor setback prior to a significant leap, asserting that if he becomes more powerful, he can exact vengeance in an even more severe manner. The girl rises and proposes that they return, as their parents are likely awaiting their arrival. It's late in the evening when the household returns. Everyone is delighted about the enjoyment they experienced. Suhook requests that they proceed without him, as he intends to visit the convenience store to purchase pain relief patches for his parents, while his sister insists on having a melon-flavored ice cream. The awakened strolls serenely along the avenue, until something piques his interest. It's Han Arun, accompanied by her 2 security personnel. Suhook states that she arrived sooner than he anticipated. The girl insists that he return her phone, and in exchange, she will overlook the incident with the bag. He inquires whether she still fails to comprehend the caution. However, Han Arun asserts that her tolerance has boundaries, and if he persists in this manner, her protectors will handle the situation. She additionally claims that the footage will not solely create issues for her, as he, having been enlightened, assaulted her, which is unlawful. Suhook asserts that he did not engage in any wrongdoing. He merely applied pressure to a bag. However, she struck his sibling. Frustrated, Han Arun declares that he has no desire to heed her. Subsequently, she instructs her sentinels to assault Suhook and confiscate his mobile device. The pair charges at him. Suhook merely teases that one of them landed the initial blow. He states that if they persist, he will regard it as self-defense. The enlightened prepares to retaliate, striking the sentinel directly in the thigh. The man becomes immobilized instantly. Suhook employs acupressure as it is the simplest remedy. He strikes several critical points. The man yells as a portion of his liquid escapes. At that moment, the second guard astonishes him by declaring it's a positioning method, and that he is aware Suhook has recently experienced enlightenment. He introduces himself as Kim Mansu, stating that he believes Suhook was merely an ordinary combatant and never anticipated him to employ his black marble. Suhook chuckles, labeling him as theatrical, employing that tone as if he acknowledges him. Annoyed, the man inquires if the former emperor genuinely lacks knowledge of his identity. Suhook inquires whether he is meant to be odd, and if that is a rustic name he takes pride in. Kim Mansu states that he was a contender for the vice presidency of the Chun-Hee Guild. With a grin, he remarks that Suhook is fascinating. The sentinel inquires whether he believes that merely due to a stroke of fortune, he is entitled to behave presumptuously, asserting that this situation is on an entirely different plane from a brawl. Subsequently, he launches one of his spheres. Suhook remains vigilant as the projectile hurtles toward him. yet he effortlessly evades it. The obsidian stone obliterates the barrier it collided with. Thus, the former emperor comprehends that it is a metallic orb, along with the individual employing it. The dark luminescent orb Mkwangu, a Tier 10 awakener who withdrew following his defeat in the vice presidential contest, ceased all endeavors and consequently did not advance any further. However, had he persisted, achieving that progression would have been effortless for him. And they assert that his immediate, devastating force, when he hurls those orbs, surpasses Mugi. Kim Mansu claims his performance is remarkable. He claims that initially he believed his adversary had obstructed it by mere chance, but he has come to understand that he was mistaken. Kim Mansu is aware that he is the one, the renowned masked avenger without a title. Nevertheless, the astonishing aspect is that Kim Mansu declares he does not wish to be his adversary, which ultimately frustrates Hanaruan. He responds that he must withdraw his appeal, as he has no inclination to confront the other individual. Mansu expresses his pleasure in encountering him, despite the distinctly uncomfortable circumstances, and discloses that he has been searching for him for a considerable time. He also mentions that this isn't an ideal location for an extended discussion. The gentleman expresses his intention to reconnect shortly, aspiring for a fruitful conversation. However, lacking enthusiasm, Suhuk urges him to continue fantasizing, as they are not, in truth, companions. Mansu pleads with him not to dismiss him so brusquely. The former emperor continues to assert that he is uninterested, and inquires whether he has not been informed about his standing. Mansu claims he has come across numerous accounts, including details regarding the altercation with the Amugi Guild. The individual's demeanor continues to arouse the former emperor's skepticism. Thus, the bodyguard advises against being overly sensitive, as he possesses his informants. He states that regardless, he believed he was addressing a particular issue, but ultimately, he managed to capture a substantial prize. Returning to Hanaruan, she ponders what actions she ought to take. Ultimately, the confrontation transformed into a gathering of acquaintances. Her initial action is to dash away, yet Suhuk is swifter and catches her off guard by inquiring about her destination. Once more, he asserts that if he desired to dispose of her, it would be simple, which amplifies the girl's fear even further. He strikes her precisely at her vulnerable spot. Hanaruan collapses to the floor, clutching her own neck. Suhuk clarifies that he has obstructed her pressure point, rendering her unable to utter a word. The young woman performs a motion, and he attempts to discern whether she is pleading for compassion. Without any urgency to conclude matters, the former sovereign asserts he could torment her for as long as he desired, or damage something different, yet he desires to avoid that. Suhuk claims he is not the individual who will penalize her. Her sibling is. Hanaruan begins to quiver even more, and he instructs her to pause, because he intends to make her understand that all her convictions are inconsequential. The young girl remains on the floor, weeping. Not a single action is taken by the individual employed to serve as her protector. Distant from that location, within an opulent estate, the gentleman inquires whether he was unsuccessful in retrieving the footage. With his gaze lowered, the bodyguard remains silent. Han Gi-jae, a legislator, ominously states that he could be cast into the waters near Incheon, expressing frustration over his inability to accomplish a straightforward task. The only thing the other individual does is express regret. Gia inquires about Mansu and discovers that he merely fled, causing the elderly gentleman to express his frustration with a thump on the surface. Irritated, the man vows that once he ascends to the presidency, he will place restraints on those who have been roused. Giya inquires whether he heard anything more, and the bodyguard replies that the sounds were too faint to discern anything. The elderly man labels him as ineffective and, brushing him off, instructs him to summon his daughter. Feeling slightly apprehensive, the individual replies that Aruan is reluctant to come. That vexes the elderly gentleman, and the bodyguard remarks that he will allow matters to remain as they are for the time being. The telephone chimes with an incoming call from Kim Mansu. The moment he answers, he inquires why the individual was so eager to abandon the task incomplete. He responds that it wasn't merely a trivial matter to contend with. Kim Mansu remarks that he ought to have evaluated the objective, and inquires whether the individual is aware that his requested fee significantly exceeded the allocated budget. Ji-jae chuckles, inquiring whether removing a newly awakened individual is excessive for him, while the other responds by questioning if he understands that even novices can pose a threat. However, the individual asserts that despite that, he did not foresee the esteemed Kim expressing dissatisfaction regarding it. Mansu claims he reached out because he is concerned and couldn't overlook it. He then discloses that the child lacks an identity. Coming to the realization that he comprehends the peril, the enlightener cautions him against creating unnecessary adversaries. Mansu disconnects the call as the frightened individual absorbs the details. He even slams his phone onto the ground. DJ is irate at how the other individual treated him, a representative of the National Assembly. On a different occasion, Suhook is engaged in a conversation with Shinwoo, who has been occupied for a significant period. The vice president mentions that he is aware of the circumstances concerning Park Mugi and expresses regret for not monitoring the one-eyed man more closely. Shinwoo inquires whether the former emperor sustained serious injuries, to which Suhook replies that if he had, he wouldn't be conversing on the phone. It's advantageous for the vice, as he has a favor to request. He inquires with the individual regarding the Tranon dimension, which he verifies. The auburn-haired individual states that he must also be aware of the gossip regarding its impending closure. Shinwoo states that the primary guilds have already sought admission and access to the magical instruments that are currently undergoing evaluation for an additional month. However, he discloses that for them it would be prepared in half the duration. Shin. Wu states that career requires a champion, and that the absence of a name serves as an excellent designation. Thus, he inquires whether he intends to become one. Hook contemplates the prospect of becoming a champion, but he's involved and prepared to assume that role. Suhook is not an individual who embodies the characteristics of a hero. He never cherished the world, yet nonetheless, they referred to him as such. Nevertheless, it does not fit him. However, if the formation of a hero merely serves as a means to establish stability in Korea, then he can acquiesce to it. Ultimately, this is for his loved ones. Only 15 days remain until the Tranon realm is unveiled. Until that time, he must become even more powerful. Martial disciplines require 3 fundamental components: intellect, technique, and physique. Much like a champion in his prime, he perfected the final 2, but for Suhook, what remains is the intellect, his inner vitality, and nothing consumes more time than fostering that. The minimum prerequisite to attain the elevated level is 60 years of vitality, and developing it through the conventional method requires an additional 5 years. Suhook ponders how he could endure a 5-year wait unless he possessed something monumental, akin to the Shaolin elixir. Contemplating the object inspired him with a notion. He is convinced it has the potential to succeed. Suhook visits the station. It has been quite some time since his last visit. This edifice is recognized as Cosmos Sales, a marketplace that offers goods from alternate dimensions in addition to Earth. Locating the extraordinary potion from Earth is nearly unfeasible. However, if it originates from an alternate dimension, the narrative changes entirely. Mana elixirs can swiftly replenish a portion of an individual's vitality, ensuring at least 3 decades of internal energy. Suhook strolls through the structure. The ground level remains as astonishing as always. He recently acquired a quadricycle there, and its elevated cost is attributed to its construction by diminutive craftsmen. Suhook ascends the escalator to the 3rd level. On one side, a merchant is shouting, peddling dragon hide. On the opposite side, another individual presents a variety of metamorphosis stones. Suhook declines all the propositions as none capture his interest. The area is bustling with street vendors, and his sole desire is to locate a place that sells elixirs. He spots an individual with adorably pointed ears and a feline-like tail. A cat amalgam is resting against the partition. His countenance flushes when he comprehends that it is a beastkin. It's quite uncommon to observe non-humans in that place, and even then, individuals appear to overlook them. Thus, Suhook resolves to investigate. His method is immediately recognized. This is how he discovers that the being is attempting to conceal her existence. The beastkin grins, intrigued by how her existence was detected. Suhook discovers that it is a covert ability. The kitten beckons to him and indicates that what he seeks is present before him. This leaves the former emperor bewildered, as he remains silent, and he seeks to comprehend how she is aware of his desires. The creature of the beastly lineage retrieves the mana elixir, departing Suhook quite astonished. She claims that within her community she possesses the finest vision as a shaman, and remarks that it is even more peculiar that the boy discovered her first. Still in awe, Suhook inquires about the cost of the object. The feline states it is valued at 300 million won. Shout. The creature of the wild affirms that it is a high-end item she crafted herself, assuring its efficacy. After all, she seldom produces them. She expresses her hopes for his success, as this is the final opportunity. Suhook inquires whether her sight enables telepathy, to which she replies that she doesn't attempt to do so. Yet she is capable of comprehending him, and that, for some inexplicable reason, she can perceive that his position is more elevated than it appears. Thus, the former emperor comes to the realization that perhaps she is capable of perceiving his previous existence, and to his knowledge, only dark seers possess such an ability. Ultimately, Suhook consents to disperse the 300 million and place her confidence in her. The Beastkin remarks that he is exceptionally adorable and that his voice is trembling. This causes the former emperor to blush even more intensely. He insists that it has no relevance, yet admits that the situation feels peculiar. He then inquires whether he may caress her fur. The feline questions if he is some sort of deviant, but he attempts to justify himself, stating it merely appears plush. She inquires whether he ought to at least present himself prior to making such a request. She then presents herself as Ni. Suhook also shares his name with her. Ne remarks that individuals often possess peculiar names, yet regardless, she will recall his. She inquires whether he is attempting to grasp anything unusual, and the former emperor refutes it. Nevertheless, the feline maiden extends a greeting gesture. Suhook inquires if that signifies they are forming a friendship, to which she consents, stating she doesn't make acquaintances with just anyone. He can sense the delicacy of her coat. Ni gazes at him with a chilling intensity. The former monarch justifies his actions, claiming he simply has an affinity for gentle, cushy objects. Suhook has returned to his residence, reclining on the mattress. He reflects on how remarkable beast folk are, regarding their distinctive appearances and the sensation of their coat that he cannot erase from memory, and contemplating that, upon relocating, he ought to acquire a feline. In the meantime, Suhook observes this terrifying spectacle. It's time to discover if it truly functions. In his grasp, an elixir valued at a staggering 300 million won. Typically, this sort of matter is a critical concern for sorcerers or psychics, assisting in replenishing vitality when they are fatigued. It's costly for a singular utilization, yet nothing surpasses the enhancement of inner vitality. Suhook wishes for a favorable outcome. Upon consuming the concoction, he swiftly senses the vitality coursing through his form. The elixir is genuine, nothing akin to those inferior counterfeit imitations. Suhook aspires to assimilate everything, without discarding even a single drop. His abilities advance with the enhancement of martial arts. He has the potential to ascend to an even superior tier. Purification reaches 100%, resulting in a doubling of his internal energy. The celestial and terrestrial harmonization method exhibits remarkable synergy with a cleansed physique. Regarding bone regeneration, it is currently occurring at a rate of 1 to 2. If Suhook accumulates 3 additional years of inner vitality, he will swiftly attain his objective of superior status. The deity of combat is at tier 38. Achieving complete purification has unveiled new opportunities. A physique with flawless energy circulation is an aspiration for all practitioners of martial arts. The Huan landmass, attaining this caliber independently, was sufficient to be regarded as a superhuman. He was unable to accomplish it himself. Suhook wishes to understand the secondary prerequisite for achieving bone regeneration. He's astonished by what it requires. Power, stamina, and nimbleness must all exceed 200. To achieve that via advancement, he would require a minimum of level 180. Suhook understands that concentrating on that will require an eternity. Yet, he possesses the necessary training. Nevertheless, he must proceed gradually. Thus, a fortnight elapses. Suhook accelerates his ATV with urgency. After all, the day of the promise is approaching swiftly. Through the harmonization of the celestial and terrestrial realms, his inner strength grew by 2 years. At last, the moment has arrived to demonstrate his value in the Trana dimension. The gateway is situated in a region governed by the armed forces. Upon his arrival, he is instructed to halt and disclose his identity. The warrior inquires whether he is a seeker. Thus, Suhook presents his identification. He is authorized to proceed. and prior to that he must enroll his permit. An individual positioned behind the former emperor shouts to him. The individual serves as an assistant to Vice President Kim Yong-soo, who is present to provide direction. He then requests Soo-hook to accompany him. The gateway appears to be more formidable than the rest. Large. Soo-hook considers it peculiar, but the assistant clarifies that it's due to his use of unfamiliar apparatus. The former emperor recalls that they mentioned it would originate from Elvenheim, and if there are elves present, he contemplates the likelihood that it is Shahar. The area is undergoing colonization. Soo-hook traverses into the alternate realm. Upon finally observing the environment, he quickly realizes that the ambiance here is distinctive. Soo-hook observes. Regardless, he operates his all-terrain vehicle. Upon completing the parking, he proceeds indoors, and that is when he discovers the reason behind the pervasive sense of emptiness. As numerous individuals are present, someone shouts to him, inquiring whether he arrived by himself. The gentleman Hook merely expresses his desire to ascend to the 3rd level, leaving the gentleman taken aback, as he clarifies that, in addition to necessitating a booking, it is also costlier. Ji Wong serves as his guide and mentions that the organization recently arrived, requesting him to accompany them. Soo-hook. He is struck by the stark contrast of the location in relation to the ground level. Undoubtedly, this exemplifies capitalism at work. Ji Wong reveals his chamber to him. His aide has yet to arrive. The elf referring and that it is a privilege to encounter him. That greeting renders Soo-hook utterly astounded. Observing the increasing discomfort, the elf expresses regret for her manner of speaking, clarifying that she struggles with interpersonal interactions. However, the ex-emperor counters that this isn't the issue, and then proposes that she take a seat. The chamber is entirely secluded, just as the guide had indicated. Serenial clarifies that the beverage is crafted from golden lunar foliage cultivated by the Elian tribe. That exceptional item is pricier than gold. That truly makes Soo-hook feel significant. Upon the elf, Soo-hook inquires whether she possesses a mystical device that identifies cosmic energy, a concept he has come across. Serenial clarifying that, despite being a prototype, it performs effectively with rank 7 portals and beneath. The elf, notwithstanding the cap on levels, she asserts that the issue will be resolved shortly. Following, Serenial subsequently engages the scanner. The elf, she is truly concentrated on it. As the vocabulary expands, the potency intensifies. Something truly astonishes the ex-emperor. He gave Hook, however, he is unfamiliar with the region's topography, which prevents him from determining the precise site. Abruptly, she mentions that the paramount aspect is that she discovered the Cosmo energy 300 kilometers distant in the Prisa mountain range, and inquires if he wishes to depart immediately. However, Soo-hook would prefer to depart the following day. The elf expresses that he ought not to procrastinate due to his concern for her, yet the ex-emperor asserts that they cannot proceed as he is fatigued. Serenial merely remains silent regarding it. Subsequently, she clarifies that this is his chamber. The elf rises, mentioning that her chamber is adjacent, and bids him farewell. The initial beams of sunlight emerge swiftly, entering through the window and illuminating the space. Soo-hook, he observes an individual nearing. The ex-emperor swings open the door to welcome Serenial and inquires if she is doing all right. She ignores Serenial. The pair strolls towards the automobile. Soo-hook believes that a four-wheeler is somewhat cramped for a duo. He inquires whether it is permissible for her to travel behind him, to which the elf asks for clarification on his statement. Soo-hook accelerates his four-wheeler, and in an instant, the pair embarked on their quest. Navigating the nearly abandoned metropolis, an individual inquires whether the pair has departed. Ji Wong affirms that he witnessed it firsthand. The hairless man claims he will receive compensation once this concludes. However, Ji Wong cautions him that the agreement stipulated payment in advance. Yet the individual asserts that if an elf is included, it holds an additional value of $1 billion. With a grin, the hairless man inquires whether he didn't mention that he honors his commitments. Fearful, Ji Wong clarifies that this is not what he intended. The hairless man advises him not to squander his existence out of obstinacy. However, Ji Wong is furious that the man took his information and departed, attempting to determine if circumstances will unfold in his favor. In the meantime, on the deserted path, the pair navigates the treasure trail on the all-terrain vehicle. Serenial provides the instructions initially. Proceed straight for 17 kilometers, make a right turn, and continue onward for another 20 kilometers. Soo-hook detects unusual activity. Enraged beasts are approaching to assault them. At the forefront, appear the colossal rodents. Serenial employs the gnome's enchantment, forging a route for them amidst the creatures. The beings also experience damage. She employs the water elemental Undine, causing a being to materialize. The rodents are assaulted by the force. Suhuk ponders whether she is invoking apparitions and seeks to discover the elf's abilities. An even larger rodent appears. Conditions deteriorate for them further. He attempts to evade the creature. Once more, the elf invokes the gnome's incantation, summoning a diminutive terrestrial spirit. However, the large rodent resists it. Serenial is astonished he breached her defense so swiftly. Suhuk marvels at the sensation coursing through his entire physique, asserting that he will manage it. The creature shrieks upon realizing he is advancing directly towards it, and he's prepared to strike it. Suhuk strikes it with a gust fist, creating a massive opening in the creature. The being collapses onto the earth. Suhuk is irate and demands to know how it has the audacity to attempt to seize his 800 million. The elf, however, is astonished to witness a breeze spirit, something unattainable for a human. However, the one who awakens clarifies that it isn't genuine, that he is merely collecting air with his vitality and propelling it ahead. Nevertheless, she remains awestruck as he casually discusses chi eruptions, which demand considerable expertise, and he employs it effortlessly. The elf is aware that he is becoming significantly more powerful, and now she understands why her mentor praised him so fervently. Suhuk senses that something is amiss. A blazing orb hurls towards them, striking the earth with a detonation. The former emperor was swifter and succeeded in rescuing both of them. Suhuk inquires of Serenial regarding her well-being, still somewhat perplexed by the recent events. She replies in the affirmative and expresses her gratitude to him. Several vehicles are approaching them. The elf inquires whether the former emperor is familiar with them, yet he was on the verge of posing the identical question. Suhuk observes that the automobiles possess an enchanted protective shield. This indicates that confronting directly is not advisable. He inquires of the elf whether she is capable of operating a vehicle, and, fortunately, she possesses a dimensional driving permit. Suhuk inquires about her level of experience, seemingly perplexed. She responds that she has approximately 3 years. Thus, Serenial assumes control of operating the ATV. He additionally verifies whether she can navigate between the two vehicles. Upon her affirmation, the Awakener instructs her to hasten. The vehicles are on the verge of converging. One of the adversaries possesses an object. He's convinced they are barreling directly towards their demise. Thus the ruffian hurls the rock. It strikes the surface and fragments into numerous bits. The opposing adversary employs his expertise, a type of granular mist. Serenial instructs him to wait. She executes a rapid maneuver, evading both snares. Suhuk beams at the excellent collaboration. Subsequently, he leaps directly onto the vehicle, alarming the hoodlums when they discover something atop the roof. Suhuk seizes a portion of the vehicle, harnessing energy to gain additional power. The hairless man perceives this as insanity and believes he possesses a desire for self-destruction. Suhuk continues to exert effort to tear the ceiling away. However, the hairless man claims he is foolish for attempting to shatter it, as it is fortified steel crafted by dwarves. Despite all his exertion, Suhuk succeeds in accomplishing it, rendering his adversary astonished. He then instructs the henchmen to assault the former emperor. One of them offers to manage it, launching a fireball at Suhuk, while the former emperor employs the rooftop as a barrier, the substance resisting the intensity of the flames. Upon the conclusion of the assault, he discards the object carelessly. Hook seizes one of the occupants in the vehicle, causing the bald man to become agitated with him. However, that isn't the sole concern he must contend with. They are advancing directly toward a massive rock obstruction. Subsequently, the vehicle collides. Serenial offers a gentle grin at the task successfully completed. The hairless man is frightened that they genuinely were defeated so effortlessly. However, he isn't going to allow that to occur. The hefty individual then leaps out of the vehicle. When he touches down, his feet resembles boulders. In his metamorphosis, he vows to eliminate the scrawny wretch. His dimensions are alarmingly massive. Suhuk grins. After all, it has been some time since his previous encounter with a transformer. The colossal rock creature lunges towards him. Suhuk evades to avoid being squashed, keeping a safe distance from that being. The ex-emperor observes that his physique feels excessively rigid. Serenial has returned, for she understands that the stone figure possesses greater strength than he appears to have. Suhuk believes the adversary is at level 10, understanding that it would be foolish to confront him directly. Suddenly, he observed something frightening. The statue abruptly disappeared. They glanced behind, perceiving something emerging from beneath the surface. Suddenly, the large individual surprises them with an ambush. The pair leaps just before being flattened. However, his $800 million quad bike didn't fare as well. That leap preserved his existence. Nonetheless, he's exceedingly angry because his entire wealth was destroyed. Thus, he requests the elf to withdraw temporarily. Suhook plans to restore him to his human form. Subsequently, he leaps, shifting, exceedingly swift toward the rock figure. Suhook delivers a strike with his leg, but he ultimately strikes nothing but emptiness. The sculpted figure is no longer present. He was so swift that Suhook couldn't even perceive him. Subsequently, the adversary emerges from beneath the surface, attempting another ambush. However, the previous emperor successfully intercepts just in time. Suhook is unaware of when his adversary crept up behind him. However, he is certain that the foe is burrowing through the earth like a rodent in preparation for an assault. Suhook believes he can employ a dual talent, similarly to Park Mugi. As he assaults the towering figure, he mocks him, declaring that he evades like a rodent. The previous emperor halts a short distance away from him. Suhook must penetrate that resilient exterior initially, and there exists but a singular method. He opts for a frontal assault. The ex-emperor concludes that if the exterior proves too formidable, he must obliterate the interior, employing his intrinsic annihilation method to accomplish this. However, the large individual astonishes him and inquires if he genuinely believed he was the sole person capable of disassembling something from within. Suhook finds himself in a difficult predicament. Subsequently, the granite figure assaults. Concerned by the sight before her, Serenial calls out for the fighter. With a malevolent smirk, the stone figure declares that it is her turn. He expresses a desire to whisk her away to a secluded place for some private moments, but he lacks patience. The elf is resolute in their quest to defeat this creature and rescue the champion, and there exists only one method to achieve this. Serenial is about to seek assistance from the ethereal beings. The stone figure reassures her not to be concerned, as he will direct her immediately to her companion. He strikes the elf. Particles ascend, creating a veil. Serenial remained unscathed in the assault. Gradually, she begins to comprehend what transpired. Before her stands Suhook, restraining the strike. The stony figure appears quite astonished, and Suhook seizes the opportunity to mock him, inquiring if he has ever come across this notion. That tenderness triumphs over rigidity, and an adaptable strategy can overcome sheer strength. Suhook realizes he became negligent previously, as he never anticipated that an unusual octopus like himself could possess such strength. The ex-emperor further asserts that based on his prowess, he is placed at rank 12, provoking the adversary's fury. Subsequently, the golem attempts to assail him, yet inexplicably it fails to function. He is unable to even shift. And Suhook asserts that had he confronted him at least a fortnight earlier, the outcome likely would have been distinct. But on this occasion, it's distinct. Suhook inquires whether he is aware that every area in the universe contains boundaries, and that they are not endless. He states they curve, fracture, and then rejoin, and inquires whether he is aware of what the interval between those lines is referred to as. Then Suhook responds that they are termed fractures. Subsequently, the ex-emperor grazes a location. He proclaims that even the most resilient stone, enduring steadfastly for over a millennium, will shatter if the fissures are feeble. And then the stony figure begins to fracture. Thus, Suhook vows that his days of enlightenment will conclude at that moment. The fissure continues to expand. Then the man collapses onto the earth. He cannot fathom what is occurring within his physique. Filled with dread, he contemplates whether his strength is truly departing for good. The former stony figure pleads for its restoration. Thus, the fury of Li Wu Jin and his crew reached a conclusion. Deprived of their capabilities, they amount to nothing, merely pitiful, ineffectual offenders. A blemish is visible on the shaven individual's arm. During the questioning, they discover additional information. They belong to Magnus, a renowned global criminal organization. The majority of them were not even enrolled with the awakened organization. This is due to the fact that Magnus has covertly been generating awakened beings, or even pilfering them from the organization and erasing their documentation. Suhook understands that such an undertaking would be unfeasible without someone on the inside. Therefore, he must converse with Shen Wu regarding the matter. The offenders are placed into the vehicle individually. Suhook believes they will endure a challenging period in the coming days, yet he remains indifferent. He contemplates whether such matters induce discomfort in Serenial. The elf merely requests that they depart. Suhook inquires whether it pertains to the ensnared mountain, to which she affirms, indicating that they still must locate the Cosmo energy. He consents, yet there remains an issue in the rear of the vehicle. With a lethal gaze, Serenial declares that a band of wrongdoers such as this warrants torment, rendering them quite apprehensive. Feeling reassured, Serenial states that he will proceed as intended. Thus they embark on the expedition alongside the crew, proceeding to the peak, in pursuit of the Cosmo vitality. Returning to the tavern, the ground level is crowded as usual. Suddenly, an individual enters. He claims the speculation is accurate that the individual he seeks resides in this realm, and inquires about how he might locate him. Individuals are fearful, after all. One of the Universal Eight is present. Andreev grins and advises them to unwind. He and his henchmen ascend the staircase, ascending to the most opulent level. Abruptly, an individual shouts to, "It's Jia Wang," expressing that he possesses something exceedingly significant to convey to him. Andreev gazes at him and remarks that humanity is truly captivating, asserting that emotions by themselves can supersede control and compel individuals to act. The escort is perplexed by his statements. Subsequently, the blonde remarks that it was insignificant, and he merely wishes to understand what he needs to convey to him. Jiawang discloses that the individual he is seeking departed earlier with an elf, and that the Magnus Guild pursued them. He likewise commends the elf's allure, and informs Lord Vladimir that he would be fond of her as well. Andreev becomes contemplative upon hearing his words. This leads Jiawang to believe he will agree to it. Furthermore, the guide senses that the day is extraordinary, as he never anticipated having a conversation with an individual from the Universal Eight. Then Andreev's response strikes like a blade. The blonde merely expresses regret that he nearly soiled his white ensemble. He was merely intrigued by the extent of Jiawang's avarice, but ultimately he is merely a worthless pawn entangled with Magnus. Andreev insists that someone rectify the situation without delay. In the meantime, at the summit of Black Fang, it had been an entire week of seeking the Cosmo energy. Suhook conquered numerous creatures to arrive, yet no indication remains. Until he perceives something amiss with the droplet, he raises his gaze and encounters something alarming. On. The ceiling resembles a colossal bat. The being perceives their existence. It soars in their direction. Subsequently, it emits an ultrasonic wail. Serenial is influenced by the noise. Yet, everything improves when Suhook places his hands over her ears. He requests the elf to remain motionless, clarifying that the shield will obstruct soundwave assaults temporarily. The enormous bat becomes enraged and assaults. Serenial understands that Cosmo energy is emerging from the behemoth. Suhook recognizes this as the leader, and contemplates whether that creature was referred to as a flame bat. He understands that a fist wind strike will not suffice. In that scenario, there remains an action he can undertake. The Awakener shoots at the bat, employing a barrage of fist winds. It's akin to numerous orbs of illumination. However, the supervisor retaliates with a scorching shriek. Suhook evades just in time to avoid becoming a kebab. At that moment, he comprehends that the bat is energizing, necessitating him to transcend the boundaries. Suhook sprints towards the creature, prepared to deploy fist wind onslaught. The bat shrieks as it assaults. Subsequently, Suhook delivers a blow, inflicting pain upon the entity with his strength. Serenial observes the clash. Astonished, the colossal bat descends at his feet. Suhook gazes at the being and remarks that, devoid of its wings, there's nothing remarkable about it. He still has a task to complete, ultimately conquering the fire bat. With the task concluded, his rank ascends. Despite employing multiple gusts of wind, his inner vitality remains completely replenished due to an extraordinary recovery rate. Although it's minimal, it practically resembles being boundless. His eyes illuminate with excitement at what he observes. He inspects the corporeal form of the flame bat. Suhook grasps a large gemstone and inquires whether it is the cosmic energy. Serenial, who is in proximity, verifies that the retrieval of the item has been finalized. The former sovereign aims to annihilate it and seal the gateway, but initially he must reach out to the organization to extract the awakened individuals from that location. Serenial additionally discovers a mana gem discarded by the bat. They vanquished approximately 1,000 creatures on Black Fang Ridge. The majority of them are inferior rodents. However, mana stones present a contrasting narrative. Just the previous week, Sahuk acquired 11 6-star items. Serenial asserts that it's not unexpected it appears distinct, as those mana gems possess considerable strength, and you could acquire a 7-star gem with them. This is excellent for Sahuk, as it can be traded for 160 million, and they have gathered 11 from creatures, along with a possible 7-star. Summing it all together, that amounts to more than 2.08 billion won. And even after taxation, there will still be sufficient funds for him to purchase another ATV. Serenial astounds him by declaring she will forego her portion, as elves require no terrestrial currency, merely a few authorizations. She relinquishes the gem, and remarks that in either case, he vanquished a greater number of creatures. Nevertheless, Sahuk believes it is unjust not to divide it, and the elf suggests that if it truly troubles him, he ought to journey to Elvenheim at some point. Serenial further mentions that should he actually proceed with that, he could instruct her in some aspects of martial arts. She claims she lacks the prowess in combat like her mentor, and the former emperor remarks that she is a sorceress, discovering that Shahar possesses the same abilities. The elf expresses that she cannot articulate the reason, yet she perceives a distinction between his combat skills and those of his instructor, acknowledging her own lack of aptitude in that area. She expresses that she does not wish to be an encumbrance on the front lines. With a faint grin, Sahuk mentions that when the moment arrives, he'll pay a visit, but for the time being, they must return. The journey is undertaken by automobile, cruising along the deserted path with the beams illuminating the... As darkness falls, the rendezvous location gradually emerges. Serenial observes through the window, then astonishes the warrior by stating, he may leave her there. Sahuk appears displeased that the moment has arrived for them to part ways. Nevertheless, he fulfills the request made by the elf. Serenial expresses her gratitude to him for successfully accomplishing her task without any harm. Sahuk expresses his gratitude to her as well, noting that circumstances became significantly more tranquil for him too, and wishing they will reunite in the future. The elf inquires whether he had not vowed to travel to Elvenheim, and he affirms it. Subsequently, she remarks that even if it's not coincidental, they will encounter one another again, and they anticipate that the gathering will occur under more favorable conditions. Once more, Sahuk bids farewell to his mission companion. Subsequently, she remarks that he may refer to her as genuine, specifically during their next encounter. The young man finds himself at a loss for words, yet he ultimately consents to her minor appeal. In the meantime, the henchmen can no longer endure their role as the third wheel in their partnership. Thus, it's now official. The pair's objective has concluded. Sahuk seizes his mask, believing it's finally time to put it to use. The former emperor recalls that Shinu mentioned a champion requires a touch of drama. Subsequently, he dons his disguise and presses the gas pedal to the maximum, prepared to present a small performance. The departure from this realm is just in front, as he traverses the gateway alongside the Magnus Guild, swiftly traversing to the opposite side, ultimately making its way back to Earth. In the distance, a group of individuals is already anticipating his arrival. Being forced to halt, the thugs find themselves tossed back and forth, and individuals are eager to learn additional information. They gather around the vehicle as soon as he steps out. Sahuk radiates vitality for all to observe, astonishing individuals when they discover it's from the Tranan realm, yet they remain unaware of the creator. Subsequently, no individual reveals themselves to all. Individuals claim that, by seizing the cosmic energy initially, the champion triumphed over Vladimir, yet uncertainties remain regarding the authenticity of this event. Young Sahuk expresses gratitude to the champion for his actions, and requests a brief moment to confirm the item. Utilizing the device, they verify that the Cosmo energy is genuine. The assistant is pleased with the excellent performance. There is no longer any reason to question it. Subsequently, young Sahuk rejoices that no individual retrieved the Cosmo energy from the Tranan realm, astonishing everyone completely with what they are listening to. Yet, subsequently, they begin to chant the name of the protagonist. Remaining at the location, the Blood Prince receives the information regarding young Sahuk's exit. Astonished, Andreev inquires whether the child hadn't just crossed into the dimension recently. He offers a faint grin, but he is engulfed by fury at being surpassed. forced to acknowledge that no title is truly exceptional. He's also furious with Ocean Wu. Andreev subsequently announces their decision to return, as there is no longer any justification for remaining. The fair-haired fellow, as usual, strides alongside his two lackeys. Andreev observes the gazes of individuals. They believe the fair-haired individual is ultimately not remarkable. He was surpassed by an unknown. However, Vladimir considers them pitiable for their ineptitude, merely chronicling others' achievements to enhance their own sense of superiority. He isn't merely present to tidy up the realm. Andreev believes that for an individual possessing such significant sway, Baki Mugen might be quite perilous. For him, circumstances became all the more captivating. In the meantime, Magnus's henchmen are apprehended. Young Se urges them to expedite their exit before the journalists inundate the area. The deputy president has ultimately arrived. Young Su requests him to accompany. Shen Wu unzips the tent, discovering Sehuk stationed inside. Sporting a radiant grin, the auburn-haired individual remarks that he heard he delivered an outstanding performance. The champion responds that a bit of flair wouldn't be detrimental. Shen Wu inquires whether he enjoyed it. However, Sehuk merely contemplates that he truly has no objection to remaining uninvolved. Regardless, the deputy commends him for the excellent effort and states that the organization will manage the remainder. The former emperor then mentions Magnus. Shen Wu grins uncomfortably. At that moment, Sehuk comprehends that he was already aware. Ultimately, they are a global criminal organization. Chuckling somewhat anxiously, the deputy requests that he not gaze at him in that manner, for occasionally it seems as though the champion might strike him at any instant. He subsequently expresses remorse and concedes that he has been aware of Magnus's Korean division for quite some time. Shen Wu states that in contrast to the others, they haven't accomplished anything significant, but that's not the message the former emperor wishes to receive. The deputy indicates they received directives from superiors, instructing them to remain silent regarding the matter. Since the name Magnus holds significant influence, any disclosure could lead to complications for the higher-ups. He additionally discloses that merely uttering this jeopardizes his employment and perhaps even his existence. Sehuk inquires whether the superior he refers to is the president of the association, but he is unable to disclose. Nevertheless, the former sovereign makes another attempt, inquiring if it is an individual even more elevated than that. Shen Wu cautions that he might forfeit his status due to this. Due to the intricate political dynamics at play, he expresses remorse, admitting he could have excluded the protagonist from this situation, and assures that it will not recur. The auburn-haired individual prefers not to place him in such a predicament, and Sehuk chooses to trust him for the time being. Shen Wu wishes to inquire about something, upon learning that Li Wujin and the other members are unable to utilize their abilities. He inquires whether that was the hero's action, and without any hesitation, Sehuk simply affirms it. Astonished, the auburn-haired individual inquires whether that is genuinely feasible yet. He assures that he will not disseminate it, despite the likelihood that individuals may discover it shortly, as it is not the type of matter they wish to attract scrutiny to at this moment. Sehuk simply consents to his choices. Shifting the atmosphere, Shen Wu announces that his position will be disclosed the following day, along with the funds that will be deposited into his account. Sehuk is also reminded of his loss regarding the 800 million won all-terrain vehicle. The auburn-haired individual states that the SUV Magnus was utilizing will be fixed, registered by the organization, and returned to him. Although it was employed by wrongdoers, it is likely more costly than his all-terrain vehicle, in addition to possessing resilience against magical assaults and various other elements. Sehuk estimates that the starting price is at least 2 billion won or higher, and that proposal is exceptionally favorable for him. Shen Wu observes that it truly brought joy to the champion, and the former emperor validates this. The loss of his ATV created a void in his spirit. With great enthusiasm, he agrees. Shen Wu mentions that it's a present for a national champion, and it's the least they can offer. He then states that he will contact him once the renovations are complete. Sehuk is present at the bus station. What Sehuk requires appears. It had been some time since he had traversed one. Although he lost an all-terrain vehicle in the Tranin realm, he cannot claim to feel remorseful about it. The outcomes were so exceptional that he feels as though he's floating on a cloud. Although his parents are astonished that he returned from the journey ahead of schedule, his sister is solely focused on the cuisine. Evenings such as this serve as a reminder to Sehuk that joy is not too distant. At last, the following day dawns. Radiance permeates the space via the window. Sehuk is roused from his slumber by the noise of his mobile device. He ponders who might be reaching out to him at such an early hour. Subsequently, he discovers it's a deposit alert in his account. The man exclaims upon realizing he has obtained 1.6 billion won. Suhook proclaims hurrah for Korea, exceedingly delighted by what he had just witnessed. He truly did not anticipate this. Furthermore, the organization reimbursed the vehicle costs, and now he will at last have the opportunity to spend time with his family in it. This is everything he requires. However, amidst the festivity, Suhook observes that he has received a notification. Shin-woo announces that the ranking advancement procedure is finalized. Suhook promptly responds that he is en route. At present, he occupies the 8th position and is anticipating a 2-level increase. He is on the verge of reaching gold. The Awakener extends in preparation for the dial. In the meantime, Shin-woo provides an interview stating that no individual has entered the Trannon dimension unaided. Due to that endeavor, his name is widely circulated in the press. Individuals can't cease discussing it. They've even established a fan club for the protagonist, and he contemplates whether that is what Shin-woo desires. Suhook reaches the organization structure. The auburn-haired woman presents him with a ring. He claims that merely 5 individuals in Korea have utilized the product. Suhook has learned of it, yet witnessing it firsthand is truly astonishing. Shin-woo explains that the ring is crafted from mithril, and despite being less sizable than the bracelet, it possesses greater intricacy and sophistication. He further mentions that the item is exclusively awarded to individuals of rank 12 or above, and Suhook seeks to comprehend the reason for being granted it. Subsequently, the crimson-haired individual commends him for achieving rank 13, a position only attained by Bakmu-chak, and he is formally acknowledged as the 7th awakened. Upon hearing this, that renders Suhook utterly astonished, a phenomenon unprecedented in history, and Shin-woo is convinced he can still advance further. Securing a position in the top 10 ensures advantages, being regarded as a national treasure with comparable treatment and advantages. The organization will additionally offer a personal assistant, a chauffeur, and an upscale automobile. Suhook doesn't require the automobile, so he contemplates bestowing it upon his father. Furthermore, there are reduced interest rates on borrowing and governmental housing assistance for amounts below 500 million won. However, what truly accelerates his heartbeat is the fact that he refuses to relinquish all his funds to taxation. Shin-woo expresses his eagerness to collaborate with him, and Suhook shares the same sentiment. You can detect the sound of his sibling's voice outdoors. Suhook is astonished that he leaped from position 7 directly to 12. The former emperor verifies its accuracy and expresses admiration for her sibling. She inquires what actions she should take, as she wishes to boast about him, and Suhook informs her that she is free to pursue her desires, but he wishes for her to communicate with their parents beforehand. Suhook inquires if she may be the individual to inform them, which prompts her sibling to reflect. Suhook advises her against it, as it would startle the elderly. The girl inquires whether it isn't appropriate to inform their parents at this stage. She proposes informing their mother immediately, as it would be simpler than approaching their father. Suhook considers it a sound suggestion. In any case, he had been anticipating the opportune moment. He attained gold status, thus he understands it's just to inform their guardians, despite his anxiety. He adheres to his sister's counsel that it will be simpler with their mother. Practicing mindfulness, his internal vitality attained a single void, Ya, and without haste, he will inform them when the moment is appropriate. He activated the characteristic. Accumulated interest enhancement of internal energy derived from the celestial and terrestrial amalgamation technique. Typically, this method's absorption efficacy is subpar, yet due to relentless practice, he outperformed the rest. Even if there are superior methods, none rival the enduring yields of compound growth. Suhook is pleased he concentrated on perfecting a single skill rather than flitting from one to another. Ultimately, he can assert that he is capable of employing authentic martial arts, yet he has no intention of halting. Following. Ultimately, the human body resembles finely crafted steel, fragile and susceptible to harm. Yet, the appropriate level of tension merely enhances resilience. Individuals claim there is a threshold, but there are no rigid boundaries. An individual halts before him. Suhook requests him to reveal his identity. It's Andrew Vladimir, who expresses that it's wonderful to finally encounter him. The former emperor comes to the realization that, despite his human appearance, he claims he never believed creatures like that still inhabited this realm. Andrew grins, remarking that it's been quite a while since he was referred to in that manner. A formidable being endowed with otherworldly abilities. He states that it is quite uncommon for an individual to observe him, particularly a human rather than a Taoist or a sorcerer. The fair-haired individual is taken by surprise in the midst of her address. Suhuk attempts to strike him, but he evades just in time. However, the former emperor persists. Andrew is astonished that he observed it, as he typically conjures a mental enchantment beforehand. He requests the former emperor to compose himself. However, Suhuk asserts that he hasn't commenced yet, and claims that it is incongruous for an individual from Universal 8 to express grievances. Andrew is astonished that he is aware of him. The former emperor lacks the opportunity for dialogue. He seizes the blonde by the shirt, employing a strength maneuver. He forcefully throws him onto the surface. Andrew expels crimson fluid as a result of the forceful strike. He is captivated by the unfolding events. This has become remarkable to him. The Lord of Shadows merely intended to toy with him, but Suhuk sincerely irked him. Andrew confines him within an enchanted circle. A crimson haze ascends toward the ex-emperor. Now it is his moment to seek comprehension of the situation. The golden-haired man cautions that, no matter how unruly he may be, he will be unable to obstruct this. Suhuk senses his physique becoming infused with this peculiar vitality. An event is unfolding within him. His karma and fundamental spiritual standing significantly surpass those of his objectives, resulting in a state of equilibrium. The skill of mental resilience has been engaged. The system is countering the adversary's enchantment. Ascending to Tier B, Suhuk's vigor envelops his entire physique. In the system interface, it indicates that he entirely withstood the adversary's sorcery. Andrew is astonished by what just occurred. Suhuk subsequently strikes him, crashing the creature to the earth. Andrew is astonished that a person was able to withstand his psychological sorcery. Suhuk is poised to silence him. However, the Lord of Shadows employs a safeguard. Nevertheless, he is astonished that a mortal compelled him to shed his essential essence. That infuriates him tremendously. The antagonist then rises, enveloped in his malevolent aura. At this moment, he is about to unveil his genuine strength. He accelerates directly towards the former sovereign, yet Suhuk simply offers a self-assured grin, and Dreev's strikes are intercepted. Departing the Sovereign of Shadows astounded, Suhuk radiates even more brilliantly. Taking the initiative, he inquires of his adversary whether he is finished, as it is now his opportunity to retaliate. Everything descends into darkness for Andrew. Gradually, he begins to discern Suhuk. The ex-emperor declares he has ultimately awakened. Suhuk mocks him, declaring it lamentable to falter over such triviality, and inquires if that is what Universal 8 prizes. And Dreeves expresses his disbelief at hearing that from an ordinary human. The ex-emperor, assessing his abilities, inquires whether he is some sort of vampire. The fair-haired individual merely grins without responding. Dreeves surveys the surroundings, coming to the conclusion that they find themselves in a sort of parking area, while Suhuk affirms that there was no alternative location to dispose of him. Nevertheless, the vampire claims he found himself in a sorrowful condition. He gazes at his reflection in the glass and laments that he never imagined he would be assaulted in such a diminutive nation. Meanwhile, Dreeves is intrigued to discover what he truly is. However, Suhuk reminds him that the vampire inquired initially. The fair-haired individual questions whether it isn't fairly evident, just from observation. Suhuk declares that the world has descended into chaos if a parasite like him is humanity's final chance. And Dreeves claims his remarks were severe. Ultimately, he genuinely enjoys the company of people. However, the previous sovereign finds it peculiar, coming from an individual who consumes life essence akin to a mosquito. The vampire retorts that at the very least, he does not devour humans. Suhuk asserts that nonetheless, he continues to leave individuals parched. Furthermore, Dreeves admits that despite being a vampire, Suhuk is the one who instills fear in him. The ex-emperor remarks that he appears unfazed. Subsequently, the vampire discloses that the explanation lies in the fact that this is not his true form. That takes Suhuk by surprise, and Dreeves inquires whether he genuinely believed in the authentic Sovereign of the Night. The initial ancestor would transport his genuine form to a perilous, unfamiliar territory such as this. He claims he hasn't committed any grievous acts against humanity, as nowadays one cannot simply consume life essence without inciting alarm. The vampire urges him to trust his words, as the former emperor stands to gain nothing by dismissing them. However, all Suhuk can contemplate is that this isn't his authentic form. Thus he comprehends the reason his bodily power was somewhat diminished in relation to his sorcery. He also attempted severing the energy connection while the vampire lay in a state of unconsciousness to diminish his abilities. However, it proved ineffective, and Dreves interrupts his musings. The Blood Prince states he has resolved his uncertainties, and now he desires the awakened to respond to his inquiry. Ultimately, despite not being a sorcerer, the individual identified him and withstood his psychic enchantment. Therefore, he is curious about his true nature. The evening in the metropolis is tranquil, and Dreves chases after Suhuk, seeking a courteous response to his inquiry as a mutually beneficial transaction. However, the awakened expresses that he does not wish to disclose anything personal to a vampire who initially sought to defeat him. Lord Vladimir expresses that he desires they do not become adversaries. For Suhuk, it's unfortunate that it's a replica, as he is unable to manage his energy effectively. He is also aware that the vampire is powerful, and had it been the genuine form, circumstances might have been altered. In an instant, Suhuk laments his arrogance in attaining the pinnacle, when in reality, he remains distant from the summit. To achieve that, there exists a singular route: transform into an individual of such immense strength that no one could ever pose a danger to him. By attaining the pinnacle of equilibrium on the stage, he will no longer need to concern himself with nuisances such as the vampire. Ultimately, enhanced power offers increased liberty. Suhuk realizes he must become even more formidable. Andri Feek remains present and requests that he hold on so they can proceed together. Individuals stroll down the avenue serenely. In the interim, the vampire trails behind him, expressing that there is no justification for them to be adversaries. And Dreves expresses that he admires him and appreciates the hubris of an individual who's deserving, considering it genuinely impressive. He states that Suhuk stands apart from the other Asians he has encountered, as there is an exceptional quality about him that unsettles the awakened. Lord Vladimir gains acknowledgement, sparking a stir, and they even capture the two of them on film. He cannot evade the notoriety, and pulls Suhuk into it. Andreef makes another attempt to forge a bond between them, and with no tolerance, the awakened threatens to annihilate him if he takes even a single step. The vampire claims he has no alternative since it's the sole method to communicate with him, while onlookers remark on the peculiar nature of their growing intimacy. Suhuk doesn't appear particularly pleased about someone murmuring that he resembles Vladimir's preference. In addition to the individuals discussing it, numerous cameras are capturing footage of him, yet there is little he can do. He inquires of the vampire what his desires are. Vladimir claims he merely desires a conversation, and inquires if he isn't intrigued to discover how he was located. Suhuk proposes that they relocate to a different location, as he dislikes commotion. He realizes that if they remain there, individuals will continue to pursue them. Thus, Suhuk conceives the notion to sprint ahead and invites the vampire to pursue him. Ultimately, a serene location, distant from the bursts. Andreef inquires whether individuals have ceased to follow them, and it is thought that the enlightened have indeed done so. At that moment, Suhuk observes something. There's a diminutive assembly in that vicinity, grinning. The vampire claims it's merely a group of delinquents. One of the lads inquires whether they have never encountered students before, and advises them to focus on their own affairs. The fair-haired young woman observes how attractive the pair is. During the midst of the discussion, she inquires whether they are performers, as one of them appears recognizable. Andreef asserts that they are merely children, and ought to let it go, as there are more significant matters to discuss. The duo intends to depart. Annoying one of the lads, they released an exhausted exhalation, which infuriates the child even more. Then he charges at them. Suhuk halts him with a single hand, astonishing him with his power. Subsequently, he is hurled against the wall, departing the young women, frightened by the spectacle. All the lads were readily overpowered, and one of them requests that they notify the authorities. Andreef merely ridicules them, asserting that youngsters today are utterly unaware of whom they are challenging. At last, one of them identifies him. The vampire inquires of the child whether he has finally comprehended that all his actions are now inconsequential. Departing from the assembly of rebels, quite intimidated, they express their regrets while hastily exiting the venue. Andreef inquires whether that doesn't establish their friendship, yet Suhuk disagrees, and merely desires the vampire to express his intentions and depart. Lord Vladimir vows to confine himself to 3 inquiries. To begin, He is curious about how the awakened dispelled his enchantment. However, Suhook is unable to respond. Still, the subsequent inquiry pertains to his origins, yet the one who has been enlightened inquires about his intended meaning. Andreef mentions that his profile indicates he is a post-portal impact coma survivor, yet it is peculiar that his capabilities extend beyond mere physical enhancements. He asserts that Suhook certainly stands apart from the rest. Subsequently, the Sovereign of Shadows inquires whether he possesses any knowledge regarding sorcerers. Suhook questions if he refers to those who awaken in that manner, while Andreef interjects, stating that it's an error, as they do not qualify as genuine sorcerers. It's not commonly recognized, but enchantment thrived on the planet long before the gateways emerged, and there were also those who practiced it. Genuine sorcerers do not derive their abilities through awakening. They either become a follower of someone or establish a connection with an enchanted manuscript, and that is how they acquire genuine magic. Andreef states that such individuals are referred to as purebloods, or origins. Suhook seeks to clarify whether, rather than awakening, individuals are inherently endowed with extraordinary powers, and he aims to comprehend the catalyst that incites this phenomenon. The Sovereign of Shadow proclaims that if he is unaware of those individuals, it signifies he does not exist. Initially, he requests that he let it go. Ultimately, he reaches the final inquiry. Lord Vladimir inquires whether he has ever considered becoming a member of the Universal Eight. Suhook questions if the organization serves as the final bastion for humanity and represents its most formidable members, expressing curiosity about why they would desire his presence. The fair-haired individual mentions that not everyone is extended an invitation, but someone must determine the criteria for eligibility. He inquires with Suhook whether he is aware of the origin of the group's name, then gestures towards himself. The former sovereign is astonished to discover that it was the vampire who established the organization. Lord Vladimir grins at him, affirming it. Suhook considers it a dreadful notion for the ultimate safeguard to be established by a creature, prompting Andreef to reiterate that he has an affinity for humans. Andreef states that following the emergence of dimensional gateways and the convergence of Earth with other realms, circumstances transform significantly. He asserts that the less powerful nations endured considerable hardship. Thus he began establishing connections and pursuing opportunities. And that is how Universal 8 came into existence. Nonetheless, Andreef discloses that he initially intended to enlist as many as 10 individuals. However, a greater number of individuals rejected him than he anticipated. Suhook is astonished to discover that the team is not operating at maximum capacity. Our video concludes here. If you appreciated it, please give it a thumbs up. Until we meet again, farewell. Farewell.